Take the roll.
Yeah. Hi, it's 12.
Okay, so Commissioner Vizcarra? Here. Commissioner Lama? Here. Commissioner Suisan? Here. Vice Mayor Joseph?
Here.
Mayor Svechin?
Here.
We have, everyone's present, ma'am.
Great, thank you. So I want to welcome everybody, and I want to give a really quick preview of what we're doing here. This is a workshop. It's not a commission meeting. Because of sunshine laws, we here on the commission cannot have conversations outside a publicly noticed meeting. We're not voting on anything. So this is only for the purposes of discussions. There is no public participation or comment during a workshop. Anything here that when we're discussing, we see needs additional conversations, there will absolutely be an opportunity for public participation. There is one item here that requires some input from a committee, but we'll get to that. So just so everyone understands, obviously it's open to everyone, but there is no public participation tonight at our commission meeting at 6:30. If you would like to speak at the end of the meeting, you can sign up to speak at that meeting. So, all right, with that, let's start with red light cameras. I believe we have a presentation from the PD.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commission, Mr. Manager. So we were given an assignment to come up with some research on the red light cameras. And I'm proud to say Sergeant Melissa Porro, I think, did an outstanding job, as you're going to see. And she's going to give you a presentation. And hopefully her presentation will pretty much answer all your questions, but she'll be more than happy to field any that you have. I'm going to turn it over to Sergeant Porro.
Thank you, Chief.
Good afternoon, everyone. No worries. I'm a little blind sometimes, so I'm going to put it on my, this is, I guess, our little thing here. So as the chief mentioned, we were tasked with getting some information regarding the red light cameras. And I'm going to refer a lot of the data that's on here in the charts. It's specific to the Florida Highway Safety Motor Vehicle red light camera report that's actually put out by the state through Tallahassee. So a lot of the numbers you're going to see, if you notice down at the bottom, they're really from, the numbers were taken from July 1st of 2021 to June 30th, 2022. And the last report that just came out, actually just came out December 30th, I believe is the date. So that's where I got those numbers from. You may see later on some of the data that I actually got when I contacted the municipalities, such as Bar Harbor and Aventura. They might be a little different, but it's only because of the times and also the fact that this state report, there's a lot of information that the municipalities aren't required to report. So many times they use the vendors to report the information, and somewhere in there, the numbers kind of, don't make sense. So here's first slide. What I figured I did when I looked, if you look at the state report, it shows you every single municipality and county in the state of Florida that has a red light camera program. I figured this was the 4 cities that we could relate the most to. Most of us either live in, drive through, to come to work, or in our daily activities. So I chose Aventura, Bar Harbor Village, Miami Beach, and Miami Gardens, just to kind of give us an idea of how it works. If you look, that first column is the total number of notice of violations. Now, what is a notice of violation? A notice of violation is you have a driver, they go past a red light camera, they get issued a violation. The camera picks you up, right? It takes your picture, it takes a video. After it's reviewed by usually a traffic certified officer or someone that's traffic certified, that ticket, well, most of us would refer to it as a ticket, but that becomes what they call a notice of violation. We keep in mind that these are considered civil summons. They're not actual traffic tickets. They don't come with points and that kind of thing. They will and can turn into that later on if you don't take care of them when you initially get them, but Ultimately, that's what they are initially. The second, so the first row shows you the numbers, again, going back to the chart of the dates that we spoke about. And you're looking at Aventura issued 42,657, Bar Harbor Village 14,803, and so on and so forth. Out of those, okay, and those numbers, you kind of, if you can kind of make a mental note of them, because every chart that I'm going to show you after this refers to that initial number, because we're going off of that report. So the second column is out of those four, for example, Aventura, out of 42,657 NOVs, okay, and we'll refer to them now, everyone knows their notice of violations, that's how we'll refer to them. 25,033 were just paid. People got them, they got the notice, they paid them, done. The last row shows you just a percentage. Out of the 42,657, when we break it down into percentage, 58% of people paid it. They didn't argue it. It didn't turn into a uniform traffic citation, which would be what everybody commonly knows as a traffic ticket, etc. So that's how that chart reads. Oh wait, went back. The next one, again, showing us out of that initial number, those initial numbers I showed you, we can go to Aventura with the 42,000 plus. 39 out of that percentage, out of that number, 39 were contested and they're currently pending on a decision. The next chart, Aventura, again, we'll just use them as an example since they're the first ones, although you can all see the four cities that I compared. Aventura, contested and dismissed by municipalities. In other words, they said, oh, we don't agree with this, they gave a good argument, and hence they were dismissed. So if you see, really the numbers don't really matter too much, the percentage of the numbers that really, at the end of the day, it's almost nothing that someone would argue and it would get dropped. Again, another chart here, these are contested and updated by municipalities. And that's just, they went ahead, they contested it, and there was a disposition on it one way or the other, and those are the numbers they give us. And then the bottom one is also a really good one to compare. Remember I told you, if you ignore the violation, right, a lot of people will get a violation and they'll say, oh, whatever, I'll worry about it later. If you don't pay it or address it in some way within 60 days, it turns into a uniform traffic citation, okay? And so Aventura, for example, out of those 42,000 plus that we mentioned in the initial slide, 15,162, 36% of those 42,000 turned into actual traffic tickets. And once that happens, basically you're back to square one. It's the same thing as if a police officer pulled you over and giving you a ticket for running a red light. You have to start from the very beginning. So now it doesn't matter. The option of paying it civilly through the website and those kinds of things, which I'll mention later, that's not an option anymore. You have to go through the court system. Here's a good slide, and this is basically by municipalities and counties that report to the state, how many actually use law enforcement officers in comparison to other types of personnel. And they break it down here into law enforcement officers, non-sworn government employees, which would be support staff, that kind of thing, non-sworn contractors, employees, or vendors, and then other personnel within the city. And when I put a little note down at the bottom, just to sum it up, if you see, you look at the numbers, again, these are numbers that are reported to the state, and many of them, some cities just opt not to report certain things, so that's where you see the skew and the numbers being reported. But the reason you see, for example, 33 municipalities or counties use officers to review the camera images, but then 17 will use non-sworn government employees. So basically what that means is there's actually certifications that a person, anybody here, could take that training and they could review footage. But clearly for liability purposes and just to protect ourselves as a city, obviously an officer reviewing these images is going to have a lot more credibility in a court of law than it would a civilian that took any kind of training, right? And that's, I mean, for most of us, we can say that's just common sense. Most people are just going to perceive that an officer saying, I observed this, it's going to have a lot more validity to it than someone that just took a training class. So that's why, if you look at the numbers, you're kind of like, well, okay, hey, but that's why. So there are a lot of cities and municipalities in the state of Florida that do send people to those trainings, as hard as it is to get people in them and get them certified, and they do that part of it. These are just, I went ahead and I went, again, going back to the state report, these are the different types of vendors that offer red light camera programs in the state of Florida, actually nationwide, but here in Florida, these are the numbers for Florida. As we can see, and I believe American Traffic Solutions has already presented to you in the past, so they are the most popular and the most used vendor for the state of Florida with red light cameras. So here we go to our pros and cons. Okay, so pros, probably the biggest one is there's 24-hour enforcement, right? I mean, it's just constant. Okay, it's not gonna miss a violation. Person goes through that light, they're gonna be issued a notice of violation, or at least it's gonna capture the image and then for an officer to then later review it, and then it become an NOV. According to the state report, 21%, there's been a reduction in traffic crashes as a result of counties and cities that implemented red light cameras. 33% actually see an increase when they remove the cameras from their jurisdictions. So that's where that number is. On average, and again, I did an average, but it's as high as 98% for some cities where most violators are non-resident. They're not residents. $10 of the fee that we pay goes to trauma centers, and that was based on case law. Also, $3 go to the Miami Project to cure paralysis, excuse me. It can also be used as an investigative tool. We don't just use it for enforcing people running the red light. We can use it for missing persons and other types of criminal investigations and things like that. So it's a good tool in that sense. The Florida Supreme Court, back in 2018, Aventura was part of that case, and there's been some preceding cases after that, perfectly legal. The municipalities, the cities are all in their right to go ahead and issue these notice of violations. Remembering the fact that they are civil summons. They're not traffic tickets. You can fight it, and you have due process the same way you would with any other, with a regular traffic ticket, but the cities are in all their right. And so far, you will read, this is kind of a note, it's not on my slide, you will read a lot of attorneys will have on their websites, oh, red light cameras are illegal, red light cameras are illegal. One judge somewhere, a citation was brought to them and they said that's not legal, but that's not the Florida Supreme Court. According to the Florida Supreme Court, these are perfectly legal as of right now. There's no upfront cost to install the program, and again, referring back to previous presentations, I know that it absorbs the cost with regards to the revenue that comes in as a result of these violations. And then the last one we got in there is there's discretion on scheduling the special magistrate hearings. So initially, when it's first notice of violation, you can either pay it or you can set it for a special hearing. Those are, again, civil summons. They would be scheduled through the city clerk. An individual from the city clerk would have to be present at all of them. It doesn't actually have to be the city clerk, but at least a representative from the city clerk. And then they in essence, they go to those hearings. That's one option. And then at that hearing, it's determined, whether you have to pay it or not, that kind of thing. After the 60 days, it does turn into a uniform traffic citation if you do not take care of it. So, and again, like I mentioned before, back to square one. It's the same as if an officer stopped you and gave you the ticket. So that's for our pros section. As far as our cons, the biggest argument against red light cameras is they're a moneymaker. Nobody cares about pedestrian safety. It's really about moneymaker. So, and that's what you will hear critics. But again, the data shows that it does make a difference. And it's, obviously we're going to look at the intersections and the amount of traffic that goes through the intersections, and all that is going to play a role on how effective that camera is at that light. State reports claim minimal change in overall crashes. When you look at the chart, referring back to the state report, on some of the numbers, it's just minimal. You know, so you look at it and you kind of say, okay, weighing out the cost versus what the effects are. But again, noting that when you have, for example, the fatality chart, if it saved one life, it's one life saved, right? It doesn't matter. We don't put a price on a life. Number 3 is our PD resources are going to be affected. There's no, with the current resources that we have now, something in our police department, one of our resources, whether it's patrol, traffic, somebody's going to take a hit. So because the program, regardless, it has demands, and they're timely. There's certain timeframes that violations have to be reviewed. I mean, there's obviously case law behind the process and everything. It's just not as simple as like, oh, let's call a vendor in, install the cameras, and we can get going next week. It's a process, a very tedious and specific process. The administrative costs related to personnel increase, such as many cities have, like I mentioned, reviewers. A reviewer must be certified in some type of traffic to be able to be a reviewer. So again, going back to that other chart I showed you, where you see 33, 34 law enforcement officers, many cities opt out of, they don't send people to training. Based on my research, I spoke to neighboring agencies. That training is apparently very limited. It comes to town maybe once a year, and by the time you're signing up, it's already filled. So that's another reason why many municipalities just use law enforcement officers. They use sworn personnel to go ahead and do the reviewing. In addition to that, you're going to have the reviewer or a civilian employee that would take care of the administrative costs, the amount of sworn officers that would be reviewing the footage, the special magistrate, and any additional administrative duties. So there's going to be costs affiliated with that. The program itself, yes, it generates revenue, but I know the numbers do not include what the personnel, what it's going to take to go ahead and get this thing running. So there's no, and here's a big one. So there's no control. Once that violation turns into a uniform traffic citation, a ticket, right, traffic ticket, it now becomes, it's at the mercy of the Miami-Dade County Court. We will be at the mercy of the Miami-Dade County Court, okay? They work on a calendar system. So at one point, you could have anywhere from 100 to 200 tickets on a docket, meaning an officer is removed from the street and has to sit in court and has to testify to every single one of those violations, okay? And that's something that no one else can do. An officer has to do that. That being said, prior to prepping for court, you have to review those videos. You have to look at every single one of them. One of the questions, for those of you that have never had the privilege of dealing with the Miami-Dade County traffic court system, is they will ask officers, do you have any recollection? So you have to at least know something about it. You can't just blindly say, yes, I do, because you're going to get the attorney that's going to ask you specific questions about the car and different things that you're not going to be able to answer. So officers have to sit there and have to review, even after the initial review that we spoke about from the very beginning when the notice of violation is issued, the officers are going to have to sit there and they're going to have to review every single one of those citations that are now on the court docket for that day. So hence removing that officer from whatever he or she is doing, they're done for the day. That's what they're going to be doing all day. Let's see. So going with business rules, understanding every city has business rules. Bar Harbor and Aventura were very adamant when I reached out to them. Their business rules should be very clearly defined. And what that means is basically like it should specifically say if a police officer in acting in their full duties with lights and sirens going through an intersection will not be issued a notice violation. Things like that. A fire truck going through going to a call where their lights and sirens are on, they're gonna write, we're legally, by law, we're allowed to run through red lights and things like that cautiously, but we're So those are some of the things that need to be in the business rules specifically, because people will go to court and people will say, well, there was a police car in front of me and they ran the light and I just went right behind them assuming that I could run it. Well, you didn't have your lights and sirens on and you weren't in the middle of going to an emergency call. So that's why it's really important that our business rules are very specific. And then the last one is special magistrate hearings. They can become loud and disorderly. Again, based on my research, speaking to neighboring agencies, they do become, obviously, people are not happy. They get these notice of violations. Some people are more passionate than others. Many times they have to make arrests and things like that. So that is considered a crime. Let's move on to the next slide. Some important facts. Transfer liability forms, and that basically, just to give you guys an example, is you have, I own the car. I lend my brother my car to go to work. He goes through a light. It's going to be issued, the notice of violation is going to be issued to the registered owner. So I get it in the mail. I call my brother, hey, what's going on? Listen, you got this ticket. Don't worry about it. I got it. We can go on the vendor website and we can actually download a transfer of liability. It'll be notarized and we submit it, okay? And basically with that transfer liability, it's a form where my brother says, I'm the one driving the vehicle. We're gonna notarize it. It's, I'm swearing that what I'm writing here is correct, and automatically everything gets transferred over to my brother. So now we start from square one. The notice of violation is now changed over to my brother's name, and then now he will have the 60 days to pay it. If he doesn't pay it, then it'll turn into a uniform traffic citation. Then he'll have the option, he can take it to court and so on and so forth. So that's what a transfer of liability form means. Registration holds. So people who don't pay, this is not something that individuals can just simply ignore and just hope and pray that it goes away. The municipalities and the counties do have the ability to put registration holds. There's a Miami-Dade County system that we would have access to, and we would be able to go ahead and put hold on people's registrations if they don't pay the fines, whatever that may be. So the next one is going to be notice violations are a standard 158. Okay, they're 158 for everybody. Every city, pretty much, it's 158. If after 60 days, as I mentioned, you don't pay it, it gets turned into $277. So big difference there. The notice violations through the vendors, you can pay them online. Another resource that would be used is people do have the option to come in and pay their notice violations in person. So that means, as far as, we would have walk-ins coming in to pay, and that, just based on the research, is probably about 8 hours a week. You have people coming in, on average, for, needing to make payments. You also get people walking in that want to contest the violation and have questions and that kind of thing. So you're going to need personnel to address that as well. Let's see. State reports must be completed every week. So every week, every municipality, and this goes in line with a lot of the administrative duties that the civilian employees related to this program. Many departments have part-time individuals, or some have support staff that they actually incorporate this as part of their administrative duties. And you have to report to the state how much money is coming in, how many violations, and there's just a set of reports that need to be sent to the state weekly. The reviewers. So the reviewers, and that's a fun process in itself. So the reviewers, like I mentioned, most our surrounding municipalities and counties, although if you look at the slides, we did have, like I said, there are civilians that do the reviewing. Most of our neighboring agencies down here use sworn law enforcement to review this footage. So that can take anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, and at times there's up to 2,000 notice violations in the queue. And that specific example is from Bar Harbor. I know when you compare cities, Bar Harbor to Sunny Isles to Aventura. Bar Harbor is obviously a more comparable type city, so just to give you an idea. So, as I mentioned, I think I have mentioned it before, the city clerk must be at the special magistrate hearings, or someone from his office needs to be there. So, sworn officers are not only required to attend traffic court, but they must attend the special magistrate hearing, so they attend both. So if you can picture that, it's a lot, it's removing officers from the street. With our current resources specifically, they're gonna be off the street and dealing with those hearings and those court dates. In addition to, which I think is also in line with that, reviewing all the footage again, and just familiarizing themselves with it so that they're able to testify properly at these hearings. As I mentioned, most violators are non-residents, and again, I saw a number as high as 98%. I don't remember if it was Aventura or Bar Harbor. Most of their, it's almost 100% of their notice violations are people, that they're not residents of the city. Most cities with the red light camera program, they rank pedestrian as their #1 reason for implementing this program, which I believe that's our #1 reason. And special magistrate hearings should be held in some type of community room, and that's going back to what I just said, many times they become rowdy. You can't have arrests made there because people become disorderly and just, have to be addressed. And then the last one, companies such as Ticket Clinic, they can help you up until it becomes a traffic ticket. So when you get the initial notice of violation, you can call up the Ticket Clinic and say, hey, I got this notice of violation, can you take care of it? They don't do that. So that would be, the burden would be on the person that gets that to take care of it one way or the other. So surrounding cities, and this is going as to the personnel breakdown for these 3 cities that they use in order to run this program. So yes, the vendor, from my research, does a lot, right? You can pay online. They give you all kinds of reports. They'll complete certain reports that are required through the state. But ultimately, you're going to have in-house personnel that's going to run this program so that it runs effectively and it's productive. So the city of Aventura, clearly, they have 18 cameras. So that's a lot. To my understanding, that's not the amount we're looking at least right now. So Aventura has their entire traffic unit is pretty much like it's red light cameras. They breathe, eat, sleep, you name it. They're red light camera. And so they have 2 officers that their job is they review footage and they go to court, like I mentioned, okay? They have a traffic sergeant. She's the traffic sergeant for the traffic unit, but after speaking with her, one of her biggest functions is handling nonstop all the issues that come with a red light camera. The constant calls, a payment wasn't received, somebody completely disagrees that camera got them, or whatever the case may be. So she deals with all that in addition to supervising and running the program in itself. They have 1 retired law enforcement officer. He's non-sworn, so he's just a retired officer, but not currently active in the state of Florida as a law enforcement officer. And he runs the reports for the state. He prepares the court packages, anything that's any kind of administrative duty that a civilian would be able to do. So that's what he does. And then they actually rotate when they have people on light duty, like officers that are hurt and they're inside the station. Those officers, they go ahead and they supplement, helping to review and kind of answer questions and things like that with the program. On their city side, they have a total of 3 individuals. They have their controller. He pretty much deals with anyone and everyone that's angry on the city side, and any issues with payment and that kind of stuff. But after I spoke with him, he said most of the time, although he kind of has to speak to people and address an issue, they're not satisfied with what he has to say. They always want to hear it from an actual officer. Like, they don't, whatever he says, it's like, okay, that's nice, but let me talk to an officer. Like, because, you know, just at the end of the day, like most of us, you know, when you hear from an officer, you feel like, okay, that person is a sworn law enforcement officer, has experience, knows the law. I'm going to believe more what they have to say with regards to the law than someone that isn't. They have an individual in their finance department that takes the walk-in payments and anything having to do with payment. Again, most of the payments are going to be taken through the websites that the vendors offer. But again, many people, not everyone uses computers and goes online and feels comfortable putting payments, you know, on a website or something, so we have to have that option. And then they do have a city, I believe he's a code enforcement officer or code violation officer, and he pretty much supersedes anything with the special magistrate hearings as far as scheduling them. If anything comes up where someone's like, oh, I can't make it, or that kind of thing, I have to reschedule, he would do those kind of things. But Aventura, I mean, you could, just from talking to them, they're very overwhelmed because on top of the fact that they're doing, you know, we still have our responsibilities with traffic, right? Enforcing traffic, and especially the traffic sergeant. Her words to me were, it's a lot of work, and just like that. So yeah, they are very overwhelmed. Again, 18 cameras is a lot, and it sounds like they're probably going to get more. So that was their take on that, and they also use American Traffic Solutions. The next one was Bar Harbor. Bar Harbor is, again, very comparable to us. Not exactly the same, but a good comparison. They currently have 5 cameras. They're going to be getting 2 more, so they'll have a total of 7. I spoke with their traffic, the lieutenant in charge of the red light camera program over there. And he, basically they have a civilian that's PD support staff. And part of her weekly duties is to handle the red light camera program. So she told me, and she is extremely knowledgeable, plethora of knowledge as far as what she told me. 25 hours a week she dedicates towards this program. So out of her 40 hours, 25 go to this. And again, she does pretty much similar to what Aventura's civilian retired officer does. They prepare the court packages. She deals with payment as received. You know, she like things like that. Anything, people are constantly coming in. You know, they have questions. They're calling. So that's what she does. And again, from her level, it's a lot of work because you have, especially when court comes up. You know, you're talking about, like I mentioned, you can get up to, I think they told me the limit in the court, in the traffic court, is 200 tickets a day for one officer or one docket as far as related to this, and they've been there many times. So, and you can't really call that. Like, you don't know. You could have 20, and then you could get a court date next week that's going to have the 200. So it's hard to call it. You're at the mercy of the court, and the court gets backed up easily, especially with, you know, we all saw it with COVID, right? You had things that were supposed to come up for court or whatever, and it took forever. So we're at the mercy of the court. And then for Bar Harbor, on the city side, they obviously have the city clerk has the same all 3 have the same responsibilities with regards to the city clerk. Primarily, their function is the special magistrate hearings. And then you have they accept walk-in payments. They do that through the city side for Bar Harbor as well. But primarily, Bar Harbor, they have officers that rotate the court in their traffic unit and that are reviewers and things like that. They used a figure of about 595 hours a year is what they estimate. But he says that now with their 2 additional cameras, they know that number is going to go up significantly. So it takes a lot of time to sit there and review, you know, and then again, focusing on the fact that it's really about like the resources that we have when we've been putting the resources now and how productive it's been versus now you got to pull from those resources, if, you know, so that's why additional personnel would be key to getting this program started. Then the last one was Miami Beach. Miami Beach, a little bit further south for us, and We don't have as much, contact with them as we normally, but they're a great reference point. They have 9 cameras. Obviously, Miami Beach is a really busy city, but our city, I think, is busy too. Maybe not more like with the traffic in comparison to them. And they actually have an off-duty officer, a retired officer, 25 hours a week. They specifically did tell me that the revenue from their program does cover his costs for his salary. Again, part-timer, no fringe benefit or anything, just his job comes, gets paid, goes home, 25 hours a week, we're done. And then they have officers in their office as well, traffic officers that spend all day reviewing and then approving the notice of violations. And then on the city side, same thing. They have walk-ins and then the city clerk. Now, the important thing to note with all these is the PD is the one that takes the brunt of running the program. Like, that's really where it's the meat and potatoes of like where it runs. The city does a little bit of, they supplement with, like I said, with finance, obviously the magistrate hearings, things like that, but the police department is the one that really is going to be running the program. And in addition to that, just from the public wants a sworn officer. It's traffic related. That's who needs to, that's who they want to hear things from, and again, with credibility and knowing that it's coming from officers running the crowd, that they know what they're doing, so to speak, right? So this is just some data that I received from, I had like my previous slide, Bal Harbour, Aventura, Miami Beach were the 3 cities, and so Bal Harbour in 2021 they had 22,093 violations were viewed. Out of those, 16,127 were approved as NOVs. 8,906 of those NOVs were either they either put them for special magistrate, they became UTC, or again through the app, through the vendor, they go into collections. So, and most of the time when they go into collections, and that's where you have like the hold as well, the registration hold. So there's a lot of different tools that we can use to make people pay when they get these violations that they're required to. Aventura, they gave me the period of January 1st, 2022 to the September 30th, 2022. There were 300 and, oops, sorry, I'm kind of loud, but if you can't hear me, just, thanks, Lieutenant. There were 323 cases heard by the special magistrate, 23,457 payments made on the notice of violations. That's the initial violation. And again, these are all their numbers, and it's like, so many different numbers being thrown at you, but it's really just to get an idea. When you, for example, like the first one, you're talking 22,093. So out of those, 16,127, an officer approved it and said, it's good. Like, the person has to pay it or take care of it somewhere, but it's a good violation. So that just shows you, like, to a certain extent, the effectiveness of, the footage and that it was a good one. So, and then the last one was just a Miami Beach statistic, and at the same period from January 1st, 2022 to September 30th, 2022, 985 NOVs out of the 99,422 that were issued requested hearings. So if you see, it's a very small number of people that request hearings. Specifically Miami Beach, when you look at the amount of citation or notice of violations that they issued, their numbers were really small. And that was on the state report and on the data I received from the person in charge of the unit. So I don't know what Miami Beach is doing, but the people aren't really arguing when they get these notice violations in comparison to other cities. So I don't know, that could be also, and again, this is just my take on it. It could be, it's a tourist town. A lot of people are, they're from out of town, they don't want to deal with it, they just pay it, be done with it. Which is, as an officer who worked the street here for a very long time, we have a lot of people just like that. So that's probably similar to what would happen here as well. I don't know about 99,422, but, again, that's for that time frame. And then out of, let's see, 99,422 were upgraded to uniform traffic citations. So that's basically, like we mentioned, people that didn't pay, it gets turned into an actual traffic ticket. And now it's $277 as opposed to $158. Out of those, 28,121 became failure to appear, violation of hold, or not liable dispositions. And so failure to appear is they didn't show up, they suspend your license. And violation of hold, they were like, okay, yes, you can argue it, but guess what? You're guilty, okay? And the last one is not liable, which is the transfer liability we spoke about. That's what that statistic is.
Sergeant, I just have a quick question. This number stays the same. I think there might be a typo.
Which ones?
It says 28,121 of 99,000 were upgraded, but then it's the same exact number of failure to appear.
Let's see. Well, here's the thing. Let's see. They were upgraded to a UTC. Out of those 28,121, okay, that became a UTC, there was, let me see, became, out of those, oh, you're right. Yeah, it reads, I think I read it wrong. So I'd have to get you the statistic on that, the specific one. But yes, out of that number, that 28, there was a percentage, there was a certain amount of numbers that turned into those three things. I'll get you that number.
Thank you.
So, probably too much, reviewing it. It started to look the same to me after a while. So then this last slide
Does that
is-
happen with reviewing the vehicles as well?
Probably, right, after a while. But you can't do that because you have to swear that you know that you are somewhat familiar with that. So our last slide is basically, and I'm going to look at this on my presentation. I got you, Chief. I can see him from the side of my, so, because I certainly can't, my eyesight is not good at all. That's what happens with age. Okay, so we went ahead, based on the information we gathered, we feel at the PD so that our current, we're gonna be very soon completely staffed as of March 3rd, fully staffed as a police department. That hasn't happened in many years, so it's a really good feeling. So we don't want to have to take resources away that we have right now, because aside from the red light camera program, our traffic unit, and actually our agency as collectively is doing an amazing job with being out there and just enforcing traffic and, focused on pedestrian safety. So that being said, we went ahead and we looked just based on neighboring agencies. We feel 2 officers to supplement this program, the red light camera program, and a civilian part-time position, anywhere from 20 to 25 hours a week, just like, even though Bar Harbor has support personnel that they use her duties, that's part of her duties, our support staff wouldn't be able to handle that right now the way we're set up. So that's what we would propose. So here is just the estimated cost for an officer. Again, this is our step chart. It shows starting from our beginning salary, and then what the final cost would be, which including retirement and benefits that come with it. So, and everything else that encompasses with a new hire. We estimated the civilian position, and that was, I don't know if you want to.
I'm sorry, Sergeant.
I'm like, oh, you coming over here? Sure.
We're recording this, and
it's
we have
okay.
to have closed captions, and every time you walk away, they
I
can't.
got you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for telling me that. So I forgot about that. So yes, so we estimated the civilian position to be roughly about $35,000 a year. And again, that's someone with 25 hours a week and as a part-timer. So there would be nothing else that would go with that other than that salary. So, and then that's that, and then that's it. So,
Thank you.
anyone have any questions or?
So, yes, thank you very much. Stay close
Next
to the
to this
microphone.
thing.
Thank you. So again, to remind the audience, this is for the purposes of us having this open discussion. Commissioner Viscar, did you want to start? I know that this was your initiative many years ago, so you've probably done the most research.
Well, first, thank you, and first, thank you for how thorough you are. Notice I am speaking into the mic. Okay, so my I guess my first question would be, do we have an estimate, or maybe I missed it, how much money it comes in?
Well, here's the thing with that. So we won't know until those cameras are in place, because we could, and I will, I reached out to Bar Harbor. Again, I felt like they were the closest to us, and I'll give you an idea, and this is Bar Harbor. Now, here's the thing. When it's all said and done, our intersections are different, right?
Sure.
There's a lot of variables that are just different. We have the William Lemon Causeway coming into our city, leaving our city. We have Sunny Isles Boulevard, which are our major hubs in our city, and people travel every day. We have, I went ahead and, just as an example, I happen to have it on my desk, and I felt like it was a good comparison. For, this was for the week of, I'll tell you guys, January 29th through February 4th, there was almost 800,000 vehicles that traveled through our city. Now, it appears that that is our LPR readings, right, our license plate readers. Now, through that, some of the cameras you can tell, because from the figures from the week before, they were significantly lower. So you're talking about, it's easy to say we're getting over 1 million people driving through our city. So it's hard to compare it really to exact numbers until the cameras actually get put in place and we start with a program.
Let me ask the question differently. I know we don't have the data for us, and I understand that. Based on the cities that you've spoken to, does the revenue cover the cost of the program, or to what extent does the revenue cover the cost of the program in those cities?
Well, the revenue is going to cover the cost of the program. It's not going to cover the personnel. And again,
Well, that's what I mean, like
Right.
whatever the cost of the city, to the city would be.
yeah,
So it costs, when you say program, you're talking about the cameras themselves.
right.
Right, so basically, it pays for itself in terms of the equipment and the service that we're getting.
Exactly.
And there is, some monies go to the different charities, but there is something left over of that. And I mean, you may not know this, and it's okay if but I'm thinking in terms of those other personnel costs too, let's say Bal Harbor, how much of those expenses are covered by what I'm calling the program, or whatever that revenue is?
Right. Well, they, based on what Bar Harbor told me, the cost of the cameras are going to be absorbed and with the revenue. And I know from previous presentations that did not cover the personnel costs. The personnel cost is separate. So I would tell you, no, it's not going to cover it. It's not.
Does it cover some of it?
It will cover some of it, but
Right.
it will not cover all of it.
So that's my question, because I
Yes.
don't think there's an expectation that this will cover all expenses, right? The things that you've mentioned, like I call it the general magistrate, but it's the special magistrate.
It took me a while to learn that.
Yeah, for me, it's like, even in my notes, I'm putting GM, but I know it's not. So there is an expectation that there will be an expense that the city's going to have to put forward. And I like that you brought up that because whilst you were talking, you were saying we have to take somebody off the street, and I'm thinking, no, we could add somebody, or
We like that too, so.
It could be overtime, and we don't have to take from the street. We can supplement. And I mean, as a city, we would have to figure out what that cost is, and then to evaluate whether that cost is worth the benefit that we're expecting to bring, which, as you mentioned, is the pedestrian safety. In my mind, because for a while we were talking about bridges, and we'll use the one in front of Government Center as an example. When we started that conversation, there was no crosswalk. Now there is, and as I understand, there really hasn't been an incident there. So in my mind, and I know the budget people are going to say those are different buckets, and they are, but in my mind, we have $8 million or whatever that was that we didn't use for pedestrian safety that we can now throw at a different kind of pedestrian safety. My other concern is that we're in FDOT conversations, as you know, with making all the lights red, let's say in front of Samson Park and at certain intersections, so that no car is ever sharing the crosswalk with a pedestrian, which I'm sure you've heard the stories, and I've spoken up here before, when I'm on Collins trying to turn into Winston Towers, and the pedestrian also has the right of way to cross it. I'm looking not to get hit by cars. I'm not necessarily seeing the pedestrian who has every right to be crossed. That's a problem waiting to happen. So once we freeze the lights, it's going to slow traffic. It potentially back up traffic there, because people are going to want to keep turning right where they can't, and or running the light because they're, whatever, or in the middle of the night, whatever it is. So if we're going to have more rules around, or different rules, we're going to need the enforcement. Otherwise, the effort that we're putting in over here for pedestrian safety is going to fall by the wayside
100%.
by the impatient drivers or people who haven't caught on about the new rules and they just don't know. They're going to end up with a problem, in whatever that learning curve is. So I feel that this would be a nice, in addition to the benefits, that this would be a good complement to this red light plan that we have with FDOT coming up. And where there's no consequence, that you might as well not have a rule, because and it goes back to the enforcement. We need the enforcement. We need it. Look, multiple times I've been eastbound 826 in front of, on that famous light in front of Gateway, and it's red. I stop, but the person in front of me keeps going. They just keep going. They're not speeding. But they just drive past the red light. And sometimes there's police there to catch it, and sometimes there isn't. We don't have the staffing to have somebody there 24/7, but we can put up some cameras to catch it. And that's the thing that's going to curb behavior. I'm a better driver in Aventura. I tell people that. I don't risk the yellow light in Aventura. It changed my behavior. So if it does that for me, it has to do that for others. And people are just they're not afraid here. And I feel we need to change behavior so that our pedestrians can be safer. And yeah, there's a cost. There may be a cost. Some of it is covered, but I'm okay with throwing more manpower for pedestrian safety, especially when we saved $8 million on the bridge recently. So I'm good with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lama.
Thank you very much for the presentation, very thorough, a lot of information. So yeah, I agree with Commissioner Vizcarra. Obviously, we will need to add people. We wouldn't want an impact on the schedule of our current PD force right now. And then I just have some questions regarding the slide where it says pros of the red light camera program. So it says 21% reduction in traffic crashes, and also a 33% increase in crashes after camera removal. So I just wanted to know where you get that data from. Is it from these cities that are used as research here, Aventura, Bal Harbor, and Miami Beach?
No, that is from the state report,
Okay,
and it's also data provided to me from the vendor, from American Traffic Solutions as well.
okay. But do you know what areas does it entail? Is it the whole state?
It's the whole state, yes.
Is the whole state of Florida? Okay.
It's
And
just
is
a general
this-
a general study with regards to the program itself and the difference and the difference that it's made when they were there and when they weren't there.
Yeah. So it probably covers only the municipalities where these companies operate then? Like American, whatever the name is, okay. I'd like to see that report. Yeah, I'll be interested to see the
I
data.
can email it. to
Yeah, please,
the
yeah.
city manager, can pass it out.
And then, obviously, besides the workload and the cost, I just wanted to know what's been the feedback from these neighboring cities as far as safety is concerned. Do they feel like red light camera program has made an impact on safety? Or what was their, feeling? Obviously, people there.
Right.
I just wanted to get that understanding. Mhm.
Well, from what I spoke with, specifically Bal Harbor and then the sergeant from Aventura, they gave me a lot of information. A lot of it, just like the pros and the cons, like most people, at the end of the day, the cities are saying it is a revenue generator. So, but again, with what Commissioner Viscara said, you know, it changed people's behaviors, right? And you're getting people where, there isn't, and a lot of people know the cameras are there, so they're not running the red lights. So, but I think their main, I guess, positive to it is that it's a revenue generator. With regards, every time I spoke to them, I didn't hear, oh, but, you know, pedestrian safety. And again, you're not really gonna, and it's a good thing, but it's hard to know just, because a lot of times with a red light camera, you can have distracted driving, somebody runs through a light, just because there wasn't somebody there, doesn't mean that like something really terrible couldn't have happened, right? So it's hard to know those figures, but from what my impression, based on the comments that they made to me, is that at the end of the day, it brings in money, so.
It brings in money, but it doesn't cover the cost.
It doesn't, no.
It just covers the cost of the program
Exactly.
with the vendor, but it doesn't cover the cost of the officers and part-time staff, whatever needs to be
That is correct. It's not
done.
enough to cover that.
But
Okay.
also, it depends upon the deal that you make, doesn't it?
Say it again?
Vice
It
Mayor.
depends upon the deal
Vice
that you
Mayor,
make.
could we just let Commissioner Lama finish and then?
Okay, all right, so when they say revenue generator, to me, revenue, I mean, it's profit, so I don't know, you're still at a negative, but obviously, safety is number one. We do have, like you just mentioned, some of the figures, we do have a lot of traffic, a lot of vehicles coming through the city. It's getting a lot more complicated, let's say. It's getting more complex to navigate or to, go around the city. It's a lot of things going on with pedestrians walking, tourists coming in, cars that are not from Sunny Isles Beach, using this as a highway, basically, to get to their destination. So, yeah, anyhow. And then my other question was, when there is a hearing, right? We need to absolutely send someone from our clerk's office?
That is law, yes.
That is law. Okay, can we send a part-timer, or it needs to be someone from our clerk's personnel office?
It would need to be someone under the city clerk's office. So it
Someone-
doesn't have to be the city clerk himself, but he could delegate someone to go in his place. They
Yeah.
have to work under his office, though.
Okay, so, and do you know when the hearings more or less are scheduled? Is it once a month, or?
We get to schedule them as we
Because
please.
those would be here.
So
Those would be the
it would
special
be-
magistrate
It
ones.
would be the special magistrate.
Oh, we'll be here. They don't have to go to downtown or
No,
any of that?
We
Yeah,
would,
okay.
we would schedule him, the city clerk's office would get to schedule him, and it would be at his discretion when he felt,
So it'll be at his discretion,
Yes.
okay, yeah. No, I'm just trying to think of, based on, on scheduling and personnel and all that, okay.
The county court is the one we have no control over. When they send a subpoena, we have to go. But as far as in-house, our city clerk, when it comes to special magistrates, we make the schedule.
Okay, so how does it work? So the NOV, if it gets contested, it happens here, right?
If they contest
Within
it
60
in the
days.
60 days.
Correct.
Okay, they can go ahead and contest it by requesting a special magistrate hearing.
And the hearing will take place here,
The hearing
in the
will take
chambers,
place here,
okay.
the same way traffic court would, they listen
Okay.
before.
Now,
the-
when nothing happens and that NOV becomes a citation, and then there's a court hearing,
Not necessarily. It becomes a uniform traffic citation. It's just like if anyone's ever gotten a traffic ticket, it doesn't
Yeah.
automatically get set for court. You have to set it for court. So once it becomes
correct.
a uniform traffic citation, they can either pay
Mm-hmm.
it, which is gonna be $277, 3 points on your license, or they can request the court date the same way they would for a regular traffic ticket.
and would we need to send somebody from the clerk's office there?
Not from the clerk's office. When it
We-
becomes a uniform traffic citation, the officer is the only one that needs to go. to
Only
court.
the officer?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, okay.
Can
All
I
right.
ask a question
Thank
about
you.
that? May I?
Yes.
When it becomes a court citation,
Ticket.
an
you-
actual, okay, when it becomes a ticket and it becomes $277, does the city still get a portion of that? Like, is it getting the 158 to then divvy up how it's supposed to
That
do
would
it?
work the same way that, with our regular traffic tickets, because now it's a traffic citation issued under our city, so yes.
Okay, yeah, I don't know how it normally works,
Yeah,
so.
I don't, I think maybe Lieutenant could.
It does generate revenue. The proportions I'm unfamiliar with, maybe finance can answer that, but we certainly get revenue.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Are you done, Commissioner Lama?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm done, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
You'd like to go, please,
Yes,
go ahead.
please, thank you. So the company, I know, I recall when the original company made the presentation regarding the red lights, and they had said that they don't service Miami Beach, another company
No, they do not. There's a different
services.
company.
Right,
It's in here.
yes, because they couldn't supply the same deal to Miami Beach.
Well, I'll tell
That the
you
other
what
company
the
does.
traffic unit lieutenant that I spoke with. So back in, Miami Beach has been with Conduit, I believe is the company, and they've been with them always. And even when their contract expired, they went ahead and still went with them. And he told me that one of the benefits of that company was that even back then, apparently American Traffic Solutions wasn't telling their company or their cities that an officer should be going to court. And so they were having a lot of civilians going, viewing these citations or these notice of violations. So when the court case came up in 2018, Aventura was part of that case. It was Aventura versus Jimenez, I believe, or Jimenez versus Aventura. But anyhow, they got, and these were his words, they got jammed up. Aventura did, or American Traffic Solutions, because they weren't following that protocol. Conduit was doing that from the very beginning. He also, and again, this would require our comparables as far as vendors go, but he says that Conduit is a lot more hands-on from his knowledge, where they do a lot more of the reporting and a lot of more, they play a bigger part in the administrative duties
Right.
that American Traffic Solutions, the civilians and the officers within the departments have to take care of. So they take away a little bit of those administrative duties.
Right, and regarding our vehicular traffic, the number of vehicles actually that we can show that might generate more income for whichever company we went with, does that give us additional leverage?
Well, we can't really,
That's purchasing. Genesis will have to
Yes.
work her magic when she
Right,
does.
exactly.
She gets the numbers, but, I mean, we won't be able to answer that.
Yeah.
Normally, it's a standard, there's really, I'm gonna give this city a better deal, because then the other city's gonna be upset. But that's gonna be up to Genesis and how she structures it and the process.
Okay, and what is the percentage that they work on right now? What, do they lease the cameras, and then they get a percentage of the ticket? How does it work?
I would need to get the exact breakdown. I would have to reach out to the vendors specifically to find out what the breakdown is. I may be able to just pass it on.
I mean, any
to-
contract can be,
Camera,
yes.
that's static, right, it's gonna be the same.
Right.
If we're piggybacking a contract, then we negotiate, but
Lieutenant, could you speak into the mic, please?
microphone again, sorry. So yeah, the vendor would lease us the camera for our monthly fee. So it's not like it was before where they were getting a piece of the pie, so to speak.
right.
Right.
I know we were talking about not putting in the total number that we might have in the end, just, a sample number of cameras,
Okay.
and then we were saying that it might be more costly to do it that way, rather than deciding on a set number that we might actually need in the end, and then going ahead, right from the start with all of those cameras.
Right, yeah, I think it just depends on how we procure it, right? And whatever that language is in the contract.
Right. Just
So-
trying to remember back to that
Right.
discussion we had. Okay, thank you very
Sure.
much.
That's it? Okay, Commissioner Stuyvesant.
Presentation was amazing. In the pros, I like when it says that on average, over 90% do not repeat the offense. So like Commissioner Vizcarra was saying, it changed behavior.
Absolutely.
And I know it does because I drive the same in Aventura than Sonny else, but I know in Aventura, if I make a mistake, immediately it's going to have a consequence. So it makes sense. I have a question. When it becomes a ticket and the officer has to go to court, those court hearings right now are via Zoom, right? Or they became physical again? Because as far as I know, they are via Zoom at this moment.
I believe there's still a Zoom, right? Yes,
Yeah.
they're still, and they Yeah, if it's criminal court,
Correct.
anything that's criminal, it's my understanding, from what I remember and from what I see officers doing, it's, they would have to go in person. But if it's just a standard infraction like
ticket.
this would be, then it would be Zoom. I mean, it would still require them to sit there for hours on end, but yes, it would, I believe
Okay.
it's through Zoom. I can confirm, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, as
it's-
far as I know they were via Zoom. I think they continue via Zoom. So like, it is not that big burden like before of going downtown to the court and finding parking, et cetera. So I think it make it a little bit easier.
The only thing too with that, and again, just from an officer's perspective, is
Correct.
even though it's on Zoom now you have 3 times the amount of people because it's a lot easier just to go out to your car on your lunch hour and do a Zoom on the phone versus like getting in your car, asking your boss, hey, can I take a couple hours and that kind of thing. So from an officer's perspective, yes, it's better to be able to do it from your car, but you're still doing the same amount of work, if not more, because you still have to sit there in front of that camera.
And get ready, yeah.
Exactly,
Okay,
yeah.
exactly. So also about enforcement is paramount, but also educating the people. Like if we're gonna go through this, people need to know. And I know you guys probably will do some kind of campaign
Yes.
to let everyone know.
So the one vendor that did the presentation, they recommended a 3-month, like social media blitz, just to
Perfect.
raise awareness.
Yeah, exactly. 3 months is a lot. I would do it 3 weeks, but it's okay. They know better. But once we start, not only the enforcement part, we have to have also a balance with education. And the last question I have is, how many cameras are we considering right now? Because I know you guys know the hot spots where I think they are needed the most. So probably, I hope it comes from you, the recommendation, not just from the vendor that spent here a couple of days, because you guys know, and because you're here every single day. So do we have an amount right now, how many cameras we would like to see, at least in stage 1?
Sure, I mean, if the recommendation is to proceed, I think we would advocate maybe 2 intersections to start and kind of see what the personnel burden is and, what kind of resources we're going to need to adequately support the program, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, because I do remember from the presentation that it takes about 6 months, if I'm not mistaken, once you decide.
6 to 9, I believe.
Yes, 6 to 9 months,
Right.
once you decide that you want that intersection to have a camera.
Correct.
So, okay, 2, I'll be a little bit more, I would like to see more.
Because you're gonna have.
From the, okay, so let's start somewhere, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, but thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
no
that's it.
problem.
Thank you, and thank you to all the commissioners. You've actually asked many of the questions that I had, so I think we're very much aligned in our thinking. I have some additional questions to what Commissioner Lama asked. The question for the pros, back to that page, I don't know if it's a typo or I'm not understanding it. It says the pro is 33% increase in crashes after the camera's removal. What camera?
That's when cities decide to remove the cameras from an intersection after they already had them in place. There's an increase in traffic crashes there from what it was when the camera was there.
Okay, so we used to have red light cameras. And I know that maybe you don't know the answer to this. I think it would be important for us to all understand why did we remove them. I don't know if you have that information right now.
I remember the cameras, but I don't know why they were removed. I don't know.
It was a brief period of time, and honestly, I don't think anyone up here was privy to the conversations.
So, okay. I mean,
May I?
yes, go ahead,
If-
Commissioner.
And I'm not completely sure about this, but I believe that was around the time when the red light camera programs came under legal scrutiny, and maybe they were considered illegal at one point. There was something legal going on around that time, and also we had complaints, like people didn't like getting the citations. So, but I think it was more related to the fact that around the time those kinds of programs came under scrutiny. But as the presenter before told us, it's night and day, what was going on back then and what the programs are now.
And if I may, with regards to what was going on back then with the cases you're talking about, there was actually cases going on at the time when our cameras were up, which to me, it felt like it was just a couple months from what I remember, but there was cases going through Aventura again, and it was more about issues with the city ordinances versus the state traffic laws, and there was some kind of conflict with the way the citations were being issued, or the notice of violations were being issued. So Aventura, in that case, got gigged for that, and that became case law. So that's what had a big impact on that. And then then later on in 2018, Aventura got in line with everything as far as like state law, state traffic laws, everything was consistent, and at that point, that's when they were deemed complete, the argument, they didn't win that. It was completely legal.
Okay. And I wanted to ask a follow-up, if I may.
Sure.
One of the negatives that gets floated around, excuse me, is that now people are going to be slamming on the brakes, and you're going to have an increase in rear-ending at red lights. The gentleman who presented said that that's actually a myth, but did your research confirm that?
Well, I will tell you, and I'll get that report to all of you, because it's a state report, so I can just forward it to you. But there's actually so the state report, when you look at it, and especially if you're gonna read it, there you will see some numbers in some cities and counties where you do see an increase in rear end crashes, and they break it down into rear end, side swipes, front end, front to front, and then they go into all kinds of different types of crashes. The reason I didn't put it on any of these slides is because many, like Bar Harbor and Aventura, don't report that data. Like I was mentioning before, there's certain data they don't report. It wasn't there, so I felt like it was just going to confuse everyone if I started. But the biggest thing with that number is that it'll tell you, for example, you'll see there's a row that says intersection, right? And it might say 2 intersections, 3 intersections. So based on what the state puts out, you don't know what intersection you're talking about. So I think it's going to, when you see those numbers, I think in order to get a clear picture of whether, to answer your question, you have to know what the intersection is and truly understand, because there could be other factors that are causing that. And that's a thing where I'm weary to compare us to other cities too much, because at the end of the day, I feel just from working in the city for so many years that we have, our intersections are like particular, and just like you said, the crosswalks are so close to where that line is. And, so ultimately, I don't know that the figures that the state reports are really accurate. But yes, if you look at the chart, there's some cities that do report an increase in rear-enders. So you also have, there's all kinds of apps and GPSs and things like that. So, they're telling people there's red light cameras coming up ahead. So, I mean, distracted driving is distracted driving, regardless, red light camera or not, So, I think to narrow it down with the data that we have, it's kind of hard to do that.
Thank you, Commissioner Vizcarra. So my other question is, if we chose to hire non-sworn officers, and then we also filled it in with sworn officers that were on light duty, what is the training like? What are we looking at as far as how much training do these people need? And do all of the officers need to get this training just in case?
Okay, so as far as the officers, sworn officers on light duty, unless they're traffic certified, they shouldn't be reviewing the cameras.
Okay.
It should be a traffic certified individual. As far as the training goes, it's that one training I mentioned that it's from what I gathered. And again, most of the stuff I got, one thing is reports, and then when you call people, you get like the real story, right? And I kind of try to do both because it's important to get different perspectives. So based on what I gathered from our neighboring cities, that class, it's not guaranteed. It's a training class through the STEP program, which you all may have heard in the past, and it's a certification that someone that's not sworn can acquire, and then they can do the reviewing. But you still have to send officers to court, which means they still have to review all the video, and ultimately, like I said, it could be anywhere. You could have 2,000 violations in the queue that you have to review. So it's something that a person that knows traffic and understands it, because they're going to have to go to court and testify if someone is going to contest these violations, and later on if they become a UTC.
Okay. And I want to get back to one of the very first things you said, which is how are you going to, you don't put a price on a life. So if we look at it just from the perspective of budget, the salaries are about 650,000, and then whatever else we're talking about, you can't put a scale there. Ultimately, I think that it's really important that you all tell us what you want to recommend, because you're the experts. We could look at the data, and like you said, some of the data could be
Skewed, yeah.
it's how it's reported, right? A lot of people report things based on what they want the answer to be. And I want to acknowledge the fact that we had a committee sitting and looking at this for a year, and this was their recommendation, and go back to what Commissioner Viscara had suggested a couple of years ago, that, we look at this, but also understanding the reality of it. So even if we had, a bag of money fall on us, how likely are we to be able to staff something like this? And back to, I think the Vice Mayor or Commissioner Stuyvesant asked, how much staff would we need to start off if we did just the, 1, 2, 3, versus the full-blown, whatever it would be, 5, 6, 7, and Chief, what is your recommendation? How should we proceed? And again, I'm understanding this would be something that would be going into the budget for the next fiscal year.
Right, so red light cameras are obviously tools that are effective, can be effective, and I do believe they change driver behavior. But in order to preserve the operations of our department, and I'm being very honest with you, is we need the adequate support staff to make this happen. Additional officer positions and administrative positions are a must and are needed. The program is very taxing on personnel. And the last thing I want to do is take police officers off the street and have less officers out there, and it's going to be visible to the public that we're not out there. So if you give us the support, we'll go and do it.
So how much time would you say you would approximately be looking at to implement this program at the, let's call it the starter level? I don't know what the right term is, because we haven't determined exactly how many we would need.
Yeah, so I'm going to let Lieutenant Police answer that, because he actually made some phone calls to actual reviewers, and he can give you the responses, because it's scary. Imagine if you get a reviewer and 6 months down the road he leaves.
Right, that's exactly what I'm saying.
So the recommendation would be to expand the traffic unit, right? Because just as Sergeant Porter was saying, it's important that they're traffic officers and have the ability to testify should they become UTCs in court. So we were hoping to expand the traffic unit by 2, full-time sworn officers, start the program, have somebody part-time that can handle the reporting obligations and kind of the administrative side of it. But we think that initially with 2 to 3 to 4 even intersections, we can get by with 2 and just kind of start from there and see where it goes. But our recommendation would be to expand the traffic unit by 2 and then dedicate that resource to the program.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Do we have the space within our department?
Physical space?
Physical space.
We'll find space for them. We will.
Do we actually have the physical space?
I mean, listen, this is something, in all honesty, you're sitting in front of a computer, so they could sit in their car and review, I mean, if that's what we're doing. So do we have the space to answer your question? Yes, we do.
They could potentially be on the street as well.
Potentially,
Right.
they could be.
Okay. So, because it has come up over and over, at least residents that are very vocal would like to see more officers on the street.
And a positive this could be is when they're not doing the red light camera
Right.
project, is they're going to be doing they're part of traffic, and they're going to be out there
Exactly.
doing traffic and participating in their traffic enforcement duties, so.
All right. Are there any other follow-up questions from the commission?
No.
So, Mr. City Manager, what do you need from us to proceed?
Well, I think, excuse me, I think
What
that
is
we
your
have,
feeling as well?
I think that we have the general consensus
Okay.
of you as the commission. What we would ask is, since it's a non-budgeted item, that as we begin our budget discussions, we put something together for you to ultimately approve going forward as part of the budget process.
Sounds good. Okay, well, thank you very much. As we all said, and I want to reiterate, you did a really phenomenal job doing the research, and having that sort of information and those numbers helps make it much easier for us, so it's not based on, what we feel is the right thing, but based on actual research and professional recommendations. So thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
So, are we good? Does anyone need a break? We're good? I'm good. Okay, all right. You have to be on the record. All right, let's go on to the Golden Shores undergrounding.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Today, we'd like to give you a status report on where we are, what we've accomplished, and where we're headed in Golden Shores with the overhead to underground conversion. I believe you've received a copy of our previous workshop that we did some years ago. The details in today's presentation are abbreviated from that. I'm going to show you specifically what's happening at a given residence, not the overall picture. So if you have questions or you need to refresh your memory about what the overall project is, I'll refer you to that workshop. But I'm hoping that there is, oh, good. Oh, can you see it? You can't see it. Okay. I'm going to be referring to the photos that are included in this workshop, and I was hoping I'd be able to point to them, but, well, that's going to make it a challenge, isn't it? That's the old
That's the old one.
workshop.
I remember that
Let's
one.
go to the new one.
I'm
know
sorry,
who
Paul,
has
I
control of this.
thought you were going to give a recap of that first.
Oh, do you want to?
No.
No.
Thank you.
I didn't think so. I offered it for background information. Not all of you were on the commission at that time, and I thought we could get lost in a lot of time and effort on that, but it's there for you. You'll see the pictures of, and the residents all know of all of the confluence of overhead lines and leaning poles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, there we go. So, are you going to control it? Do you want me to control it?
I believe you can. Mike, confirm? There
we
you
go.
go.
Okay. And the red dot doesn't work, so, okay. What this is showing is of the 239 homes within Golden Shores, it's a somewhat confusing number because that's 239 lots. As we know, there are numerous homes under construction. There are numerous homes that have been converted from overhead to underground. I've got those statistics in this report, but that is the general condition of individual single-family homes in Golden Shores, where the overhead lines come into the element that's at the top of the roof called a weatherhead, and then go into the meter. What we're going to accomplish with the undergrounding project is that's what they'll look like when we're done. Everything will come in on an underground conduit system going into the vast majority of existing meter cans. There are some peculiar situations where the meter can, where the electric meter is, may have to be replaced. But in most situations, I'd say well over 90% will be bringing the underground into the existing meter can. There are unique situations, and I'll get into those details in a little bit more when I show you the specifics, where because of swimming pools, paved backyards, canals and plantings and the like, that we're not going to disrupt or disturb those improvements on property. We're going to run, and again, I wish I had a pointer.
It was working. Yeah, there was, yes. if for a second it worked.
No,
Just
it's
try it
there,
again,
but
try
when
it
you go to the
yeah, there
picture,
you-
it goes away. See, it's gone. When
Oh,
I'm there,
on the screen, okay,
I
yes.
can't go to the picture.
All right.
The horizontal line that you see, and I'll speak up so maybe you can get it.
Is it catching on the microphone?
See the horizontal piece? Yeah. And it drops down? That's going to avoid having to be disruptive to improvements that have happened over the years that homes have been in Golden Shores, where new swimming pools have been installed, where pavers, et cetera, et cetera. That is a added cost to the improvement to the home, but it is so much less disruptive to what is going to happen to the individual home that we've included it as a separate category.
I'm sorry,
This
can you
is-
go back? What is that horizontal piece? I'm not following.
Paul?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you really have to speak into the microphone because otherwise we can't close
Yeah.
caption it, but
I could follow you.
He can
I mean,
follow.
if
The
you just
meter,
point,
there-
yeah.
You see the meter?
Yeah, I
See the
see,
meter? There's a meter down there on the side of the house. That's where in the previous
right there by the
picture-
door? Okay, I
Hang on.
see it, okay, uh-huh,
See that meter, King?
Yes,
Where the
yes.
pipe comes in at the bottom?
okay,
Same thing occurs over there to the left of the door, but we can't come in from the bottom. You see it, Clay? So we have to stay in the vertical, going upward. We'll go across the face of the house and then go down to where we can meet it with the underground service that's coming out from the main distribution lines.
okay, because at that point you can't go from,
I can't
From
go to the bottom of
from
the
the
meter
bottom.
can
Okay.
because there's a swimming pool. Or
understood.
there's a hard surface
A hard sur-
finish.
Whatever
or
it is, okay,
anything,
so
you know,
you
porches
go
that have
underground
been
and then you
built.
go from the top, and
We'll
you,
go from- we'll
okay, I
stay
got,
at
okay,
the
I understand
top.
now.
But we'll have to come horizontally across the face of the home.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
So that horizontal part is what, essentially what would have been underground?
Yes.
But can't be, and
Yes.
so, got it, okay.
Yes. Now, this is where this presentation is going to go to pot in the handbasket. I don't know how to, okay. The blue dots, if you see the blue dots that run along the street, those are what's called handholds. That's where the main distribution lines that we're currently installing now in the roadway terminate. They come from transformers, they come from switches, they come from capacitors, they come from all of the major FPL equipment to those blue boxes. Those blue boxes are absolutely placed on the property line. Some people refer to it as the right-of-way line, but it is where the private sector and public sector join. Those boxes literally have a private side and a public side. The main distribution lines come to those blue boxes. I wish we had a split screen because I'd like you to have, if you could go to the page that has the 7 different categories. If you could have those side by side, I think it'll help you better understand what we're talking about. Existing front of underground services, front of and rear of are FPL utilized terms, and that's why I've used them here and put them in quotations. Front of means that the service, current service, or what we're going to be installing will be front of. There are homes in Golden Shores on North Bay Drive that have the overhead utilities in the front of their property. It's the west side, the way North Bay Road curves around, but there are homes there that have front of service. Almost all, not all, but most all of the new homes are currently served from an underground service. They come from a pole somewhere on the west side, dip down, go underground, and go into those homes in an underground situation. Those homes have a minimal amount of work to be done. All we have to do is connect from their meter can. Their meter can is already connected to an underground service. We have to connect from wherever their underground service comes off of the pole into our new handholds. Those are the least impacted by the undergrounding process. The next are folks that have built new homes within the neighborhoods and have underground service, meaning that the conduit comes up to their meter can from the bottom. However, their service is rear of. If you look at the third one that has a pink line going up and then a purple line going over in an L, that is a typical rear of underground service. There's a pole in the upper left-hand corner that generates the underground service to that home, therefore the pink line. I'm sorry, excuse me, I apologize. The purple line. What we have to do is get from the blue line, the blue dot, the handhole, back to their underground service. So again, that's the second easiest aspect of the undergrounding process. We just have to go from there back to where they are already undergrounded. There's no removal of overhead lines. There's just getting from a piece of conduit back to where the existing handhole is. The yellow fall into three categories, 3, 4, and 5 of the breakdown. 3, if you look at the second one from the right, yellow line, you can see that that's the shortest one. Goes straight from the blue box back to the meter can, the simplest of the underground conversion from an overhead situation. All of the rest of the homes are fed from the rear of with an overhead line from a pole into their meter can. Then there are others that are by distance. You can see the far one on the right at the top. That's a little longer. There are 2 more in the center that are, and that's why we've given ranges of 75 to 100, and in excess of 100 feet. We have, in category number 3, there's 95 of the homes in Golden Shores that fall into that category. The shortest of all of those is 28 feet. You go to category 5, which would be characterized by the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line over, yellow, 154 feet of undergrounding that we have to do. Then there are the unique ones, the ones where I showed you the horizontal conduit. That horizontal conduit is referenced by the green ones. The green L's, you see those? Those green L's are where we can only get from the blue box, the handhole, back to the rear of the property, but we can't go across because of the swimming pool, the paver deck, whatever the case may be. In those instances, we'll come across the face of the house with horizontal conduit and then intercept the underground that we're bringing in from the street. So those are our primary categories of homes. There are, we know at the present time, of 15 of those. We're going to try our very, very best to minimize those because they are more expensive. There's more conduit and work involved in taking that conduit horizontally across the home. And there is a slight aesthetic issue of someone saying, oh, I've got to have this conduit. Well, in most conditions, there's already some other type of conduit there. There's the AT&T or Atlantic Broadband or whatever other internet service or voice communication service they have that's there too. But that's why we're going to try to minimize these, but at the present time, we know there are 15. And then there's the one to the far left on the bottom where you see the red dot. There are some homes that, working with Clay's department and all, we will have to investigate the condition of the electrical service box within the home. Most of 98% of the homes have current electrical cans, fuse boxes, call them that, that will be compatible with our undergrounding. There are a few that we know will require internal upgrades, where the meter can and the electrical panel go back to back. There are still some homes in Golden Shores that have the screw-in fuses. You recall those from, most of you are too young. Jerry, you'll remember, that have the screw-in fuses. And those are going to have to be upgraded. As we get closer, we'll identify those. What I want to focus on more today than anything, we are at 79% of the installation of the main trunk lines, the excavations that you see, the cutting in the asphalt and in the pavement. 79% of those lines are in. Of the line from the handhole, the blue dot, into the residence, we have all but 3 of those completed, where they've been directionally bored from that handhole into the backyard. There's an element remaining to be done, and that's the vertical piece that goes into the meter can. That doesn't happen until we're within a couple of days of FPL running the actual electrical wire from the handhole into the meter can. And I'm working with Clay's department on how we're going to permit that, how we're going to inspect that with the electrical department and all. But that is just a process that we'll work through. One of the things you want to know more than anything is how much is this going to cost? The commission approved a change order of $803,000 to execute this work through Stout. What I can tell you today is that we are dead on target. I mean, within literally a few $100s, not anticipating unforeseen conditions when we go to do that horizontal pipe across the back or when we run into, but we've been very, very fortunate so far on the private side of being able to get all but 3 of those, and there's 3 left to do, and they're going to be accomplished over the next couple of weeks. I don't have specific costs yet. We are working on a specific detail, taking the linear footage of conduit. As I said, the best case scenario so far has been 28 feet. The worst case scenario on private property is 154. The actual worst case scenario is there's a 160-foot run that is ours. It's the city's going back to feed the public works yard that's adjacent on the north side of Golden Shores. There are issues of cost that I have not isolated. Val and Susan are going to address those to you because they don't relate directly to construction. But that's where we are today. And I'm happy to answer the thousands of questions you must have.
Commissioner Stuyvesant, do you want to start? Do you have any questions?
How much is going to cost per home? Do we have an estimate?
I cannot, at this setting, tell you what the individual cost per home is. When we did the estimate, when we came to you with the change order to put the undergrounding in to award to Stout, it was based on FPL lineal footage that they had determined. It was round numbers, 18,000 linear feet. So far, in the borings that we've done, we are at just over 17,000. We are within a few percentage points. We still have 3 to go. They are relatively simple. We are right on target with the overall cost. I am not prepared today to tell you what the individual single-family home cost is.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Vice Mayor?
I've been pushing for several months to let homeowners know so they can save and not have a surprise at some point. I thought we had some type of numbers. Didn't we have some type of numbers?
We have some rough numbers, but they do not include some of the soft cost. So we're still putting together those projections.
I see.
And,
Yes.
and then I think that it also, there was a plan to have a sort of an update to the neighborhood themselves to include them in these conversations. Because if I remember when you did this update, was it 2016, right? So there's been, probably some changes of who lives there. But obviously, just for the public, both the vice mayor and I live in Golden Shores, so for us, this is also very personal. But yes, I think that the actual cost per home is not, it's not a hard number yet, so it wouldn't do us any good right now discussing it because it could vary. But
We're not far from having that number, but I don't want to try to present you a range because that range will be in someone's mind, and we do have some other costs that relate to the soft side. And again, Val and Susan will address, did I call you Sandra earlier?
No, you got my
I
name
called you
right.
Susan?
It's okay, yes.
My concern
Deputy
is
Manager
my
Simpson.
concern is with the older homeowners.
Excuse me?
that The older homeowners that are going to, I don't want them to have a surprise and then have to figure out how it's going to be paid for.
Let the Deputy Manager address that, if I may.
May I?
yes, please, go ahead.
Vice Mayor, the reason we don't have a range for you at this time is because in conversation with City Attorney Valerie, we learned that we have to include all of the soft costs, including Mr. Abbott's time, including an assessor's time. We have to have our formula assessed by a third party so that we are accurately accounting for each home. So we're not overcharging one homeowner and undercharging another. So it's going to take us some time to do that, and until it's actually done, we will not know for sure. We have missed this tax year. So our intention is to have this ready for next tax year to give our residents an opportunity to pay it over a certain number of years through their tax bill so that it is not a financial burden to them upfront.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that it?
Yes.
Commissioner Lama?
Yeah, I have a question. So when you said that we're at 79% of installations of trunk lines, I'm just trying to picture when is the finish line? When is the end date of this project? So does that mean we're at 79% of the project completion, or what does that mean?
No, it means that we are at 79% of the contractual relationship that we've established with Stout to bring in the conduit, FPL, AT&T,
Okay.
Atlantic Broadband, and if the city decides to add any of the
Understood.
telecommunications elements and the cameras and all. But I'm confident to say that we will complete the conduit portion that we are obligated with Stout within the contractual time, and their contract goes to July of this year. That main trunk line conduit will be done within that contractual time. That, frankly, is pretty darn good because we've added significant scope to their work. We've added drainage elements on 189th Street, 185th, North Bay Road. Those will all fall within that time frame.
Yeah.
I can't, and you only know how badly I wish I could, control FPL's performance.
Well,
It's
I
going to
hear your
be it's going to be
conversations,
better
yeah.
than Collins. I
Yeah.
absolutely 100% standing here assure you it's going to be better than Collins because we have a more straight line direct involvement in bringing the wire in. The actual energization of Golden Shores is dependent upon FPL completing Phase 4 on Collins. That's where the main power comes. The good news is, with Susan and I going to numerous meetings and finally, I think, getting the attention of folks, we are down to 4 critical issues on Phase 4 that are being worked on as we speak. I think you're going to see Phase 4 Collins energized very shortly, within the middle quarter of this year. Well, that becomes the key factor of how the power gets to the homes. If I had to put a date on when we're going to be done with Golden Shores now, I would tell you done with lines energized to the homes within the next 9 to 12 months.
Okay.
And I'm confident of that, or I wouldn't be saying it while I'm standing.
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah, because, all right, well, I appreciate it, yeah. And I know all the troubles you go through. I mean, I hear your conversations with FPL and trying to get a hold of them and all of that, so I know it's been challenging, so. Yeah,
And I've
I
apologized to
appreciate that.
staff 100 times over for my loud mouth and.
No, I don't mind
but
it.
is.
I find it entertaining. I'm by myself there, so yeah, it's fine. Okay.
it's entertaining,
Thank you,
all
yeah.
right.
Commissioner Viscara?
Commissioner Lama took my questions.
Okay, did you have a follow-up, Vice Mayor? or something?
Yes, actually, so talking about now finalization of street paving, what are we, 2 years from that?
The paving?
Yes.
Well, okay, we originally said that what we wanted to do is as we progressed, we were going to start paving streets. There are so many new home activities in the neighborhood that we have backed off of that. Not, based on what we have in the ground, I could do 191st Terrace, 191st, 190th, all the way up to 189th. But every day I drive in there, there is a new home starting, or there's some other new activity. Commissioner, I don't want to put new asphalt down and have it torn up.
Yes.
The good news is the asphalt aspect of the project probably isn't going to take 2 months in its entirety. Once we're done, once we've got our restoration done, and once we've put all the patch sod that we need to at the homes where we've disrupted their yards, we'll come in and do the paving. And then we will hold, Clay's office will hold the new builders responsible for tearing up our new roads.
So, thank you, and to Commissioner Lama's point, I certainly appreciate all that you do in that office, and your enthusiasm it works. So, thank you. You don't need to apologize for how hard you are on them.
I had a head of hair like him when I started here.
So to that end, like I said, I want to say thank you, but I also want to make sure that we give the residents that are there, the neighborhood, the full picture. So if we can create for, when we have that town hall, a timeline of when we started, because I was looking at this and I see there's no date, but I remember it because, like I said, it was very important. And I want to also say that you had said at some point that once you'd start digging up the road, that it was going to be such a horrible mess and terrible. And I got to say that is not what I've seen. You've all done a great job in mitigating those sort of, the dirt, the dust, the inconvenience has been minimal from what I've seen. So that's appreciated.
And thank you to that. There have been some questions. Why is there only one crew? The reason
Right.
there's only one crew is to speak to exactly what your point is. We could put 3 or 4 crews out there, and can you imagine the chaos in the neighborhood? We're going to meet the time schedule. We're going to meet where we are with our commitments, and our purpose is to try and make this as easy on the individual families, the individual private residents as we can. And
Right. And also to the question that you had asked, Vice Mayor, regarding the cost to the older residents, those that are potentially on fixed income, from the conversations that I've had, the understanding is that we'll be able to accommodate them and create some sort of plan that will make it not as painful as you could possibly imagine.
Right.
That is my understanding from the city manager, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And you had a follow-up?
And just one additional question regarding, currently, Golden Shores suffers with the worst internet, I believe, in the city.
the worst what?
Internet
Oh.
service.
Mine
We
is
have,
pretty good.
As far as AT&T, I know they're still on old copper wire. When do you see any upgrade in the possibility for internet?
Early on in the design of the project, AT&T suggested that they would come in and do a fiber net to the entire neighborhood at no cost to the city. Set aside the conduit and everything we're doing, but to run the fiber in. But it required every resident in Golden Shores to agree to go to their internet service. An impossibility. An impossibility from a practical standpoint, but even more so, as Val and Mr. Dion would acknowledge, how can we make that happen? We can't. We cannot force the individual residents to sign up for that. To that end, what we got was a commitment from AT&T to bring in fiber to a point of distribution. There will still be copper, but in every instance, to every service point. Not every home has AT&T, not every home has Atlantic Broadband.
We
but-
switched away from AT&T. They were so terrible.
Correct.
Breeze Line is not much better.
And I'm not defending them in any way, shape, or form, because they are part of the reason that I don't look like Mauricio anymore. All new infrastructure to all will be new. There will be new fiber to a point, and there will be new coaxial or copper to a point. What I can tell you is Breeze Line, and help me, I'll always refer to them as Atlantic Broadband, are bringing fiber from their point to the homes. And it's up to the individual consumer to decide whether they want to stay with ABB or with Breeze Line, or they want to continue with AT&T, or as more and more people are going to the satellite situation. Right. The infrastructure will be improved dramatically. That's all.
So the fiber, though, is a year behind everything else?
No. Once the conduit's done, then the utility companies will be coming in, negotiating their individual deal with the individual consumer, and bringing in, at the same time FPL is pulling their conductor in the conduit we install, they will be installing their conductor, be it fiber, be it copper, be it coaxial, within the conduit we've installed.
Why are we even allowing them to work with copper any longer?
Absolutely, totally, 100% out of my control.
So, is that your phone, Jerry? Well,
It's tired of me talking and wants me to shut up.
yeah.
Thank you.
I'm kidding. We could still pick up the closed captioning, I'm assuming, because everyone's still here? Okay. All right, so thank you again. Mr. City Manager, do you need any direction from us? I know this was just an update, and since you're not asking for any more money, this is a great presentation.
Correct, just an
Okay.
update for you.
All right, thank you. So if we could just maybe take 2 minutes to figure out what that is. Thank you. Just a 2 or whatever minute break.
It's the next one. It's the next one. After that is the park. Yeah. That's what it is.
All right, we're going to start again. Seems the microphone issue has been fixed.
I heard.
So if everyone could take their seats, please. Okay. All right, thank you. And if it starts again, we're just going to turn it down, and we'll just speak up. We just need to make sure that we're recording it for closed captioning purposes, because this is a formal meeting. Okay, now we are on to the city advisory committees. And I just want to quickly say that I appreciate the city clerk putting together some information for the purposes of whomever watches this later on, because it's being recorded. The city has historically had advisory committees throughout the years. They have varied in scope and participation. And this past year, there was an interest in having them very specific to actual issues or requests of the public. And normally at the beginning of the year, people are reappointed. And so we had requested this in order to get understanding of how we should move forward. So with that, City Clerk, if you want to give your presentation.
Okay, so as you mentioned, Mayor, I put together just briefly some information just to offer some context as to what's happened in this past year regarding the committees. Currently, we have a few committees that are active, not necessarily all of them are filled with appointments, namely the ESAC and the MAPSAC. Those are the two most recently created committees. Right now, their appointments all expired on the 31st of last year, or in December. So they're currently active committees, but not filled. Over the past year, both committees met several times. They were created with the purpose of having a clear task in mind and a clear focus. The ESAC was tasked with coming up with solutions regarding our environment and sustainability issues. The MAPSAC obviously was tasked with tackling issues related to pedestrian safety and mobility in the city. The ESAC specifically identified several issues that they would want to work on, the most important one for them being the Dune Master Plan. They met about 9 times over the 2020 year, and they were able to draft a Dune Master Plan, which was presented to the City Commission on December 5th, and is attached to the memo that I had distributed earlier. As far as the MAPSAC, they met 12 times. They also identified several issues as priorities that they would be working on. The most important one for them would be the red light cameras, which a presentation was offered today at this meeting, as you all know. And they also offered and made a presentation to the commission at the December commission meeting of last year. With that said, these committees are effective, in my opinion, my professional opinion, if they have a clear focus, if they have a clear purpose for them to focus on. What's happened in the past with some of the other older committees is that they started meeting towards the end, just to meet for them to be able to, I guess, get together and, discuss issues that were personal to them, not necessarily something that would be beneficial to the city as a whole. So with that said, you had asked me to put together some information as far as trying to assign it a dollar value so it's a little bit more clear as to what city resources are invested into these committees. And if you refer to the memo on the back page for the ESAC, there was a total, and there is a typo on this that I just noticed. So it's actually in the number of staff time, the hours, it's actually 66 hours. And the same thing for the MAPSAC just below, and it's 88 hours. So it's a total of staff time, and these are conservative numbers. This is not an exact number of time that was spent with these committees. But for the ESAC, it was a total of 65 hours that were dedicated to this between various departments in the city, namely the city clerk's office, the city manager, and the media division. And a dollar value for that, and again, this is an approximation, it's about $7,000. The bulk of that is a consultant that was hired by the city to assist the ESAC in developing their dune master plan. For the MAPSAC, it was a total of 88 hours that was dedicated because they did meet a little bit more than the ESAC did in 2022, but they didn't have a consultant. So their dollar value assigned to that committee is about $3,500. So with that, with this context, this discussion is really with the purpose of getting some sort of direction from this commission as to advisory committees as a whole, moving forward with any new ones that may come up, and also to address the current active ones that we have, whether we're going to fill them, whether we're going to leave them as is, or we're going to disband them. So with that, it's a discussion of the committee.
So for
the commission.
clarification, if you can speak a little bit about the historical advisory, or what is it called, the Historical Conservation Committee, Preservation rather,
Preservation
Committee,
Board?
because that one differs from the rest.
Yes, so that one is a little bit different, and I think my mic just went off, so, okay. Yes, okay. So with the Historic Preservation Board, that is a board that is tasked with the responsibility of reviewing properties in the city that may have historical value. The reason why that one is different from the regular advisory committee is because it's a board that is required by the county, meaning that if we don't have a historic preservation board not only active but also filled with appointments, then the county may take that over away from us. So for reasons of home rule and wanting to keep jurisdiction, and again, this is all the decision of the commission, because we can very well say, we can turn that over to the county and have them manage the whole program. But with the Historic Preservation Board, it's really either we have it ourselves or we turn it over to the county so that they can, have jurisdiction over every single historic property that's in the city. Granted, it's not many, it's about 5 of them, I believe. But again, it's just maintaining that whole process and jurisdiction within the city.
But what, is it costing us anything in resources and hours, and how does it
So-
differ, is my question? Because
I
you had
didn't
mentioned
run-
there's another additional new cost.
Yeah, so I didn't run the numbers for that one specifically because that was going to be a separate discussion. But there are some numbers because the county has gotten a little bit stricter with their requirements and their criteria to be able to allow the municipalities to have control over their own historic preservation board. So some of the criteria that I know offhand, and this is also in conjunction with Amy Canales, who's our planning and zoning director, we would need to have the Historic Preservation Board meet more frequently. Right now, they've met maybe a handful of times over the past few years, and it's because of the nature of the board and what their responsibilities are. Again, there aren't many historic properties designated here in the city, so there's not much for them to consider. They're really tasked with reviewing applications for properties that have already been designated as historic for them to be able to perform any type of work on their property, whether it be restoration, demolition, if that's what's called for. So it's a little bit more of a stricter process and procedures that they need to follow than any other advisory board. So I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers for that as far as what resources have been dedicated.
That's okay. I just wanted to get a sense of, what is required versus what we choose to have.
Yeah, so the Historic Preservation Board is required. There needs to be one.
Right.
Whether it's done through the county or through the city, that's a decision that's up to the commission to take.
Okay, and I had asked, and this is where this differs a little bit from public comment, because we do have some members of the committees here, if they wanted to give some of their feedback as far as how it was to sit on the committee. Does the commission want to ask questions first and discuss, or would you all like for them to come up, or is there any feeling either way? Anyone, does anyone care? Yeah? Yep?
Yeah.
Okay, is there anyone from the committee that would like to just say, you know, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I figured you were here because you wanted to say something.
So I apologize, Mayor. I should have introduced them at the beginning of the meeting. So
Okay.
for the ESAC, we have, anybody else here? We have, I'm sorry, Patricia Alvarez, and we have Felix Kisner. For the MAPSAC, we have Mariana Talalovetsky and Ken Percy. Did I miss anybody else? Okay, and Haviva was here, but she left. So with that said, either of them.
We just want to get a sense of what, because you were very active, and so we just want to get a sense of your feeling of how effective did you think it was? What were the pros? What were the cons? Yeah, no, you have to come up because it has to be closed captioned. So, Patricia, you go ahead. You already stood up, so there we go.
Good afternoon. My name is Patricia Alvarez. I was part of the ESAC meeting. I think the ESAC, at the end of the day, we meet a handful times, and it was very productive because we managed to accomplish the master plan doom like all the vicinity cities have already. Also, the only thing it was kind of challenge, and I think it's a con more than a pro, was the sunshine law, because we couldn't basically get together. We were very eager to be advocating more for the master plan doing, but it was very difficult because we couldn't get together. Everything has to be done, and sometimes, you know, to get 4 or 5 people together at the same time with their busy schedule and their life is kind of challenging, because this is a voluntary job that we did to get something accomplished. At the end of the day, I think in a year that we have the opportunity to meet, we did the most that we could. We present the master plan done for you guys to be approved, which is in the back burner right now for Hall, to make sure that we have something. It is a live document that we're going to be able to modify. It's not something we're going to do 30 different plans that they can use when they're planning. It will be like a good path for the developers to see what it will be healthier, because basically the dune is our first line of security to protect us when we have different storm and the storm surge. So it's a win-win situation, because most of these buildings spend tons of money and looking pretty. And if we can put something pretty that will protect us, will be even better. And it will protect our residents and the value of our, you know, we are intercoastal, the ocean is right there, so we don't have the walls that used to be when we were small little hotels anymore. So I think it is a win-win situation for everybody to have like a guidance where to start, and for all those companies that spend a lot of money putting beautiful plans to do something that's going to be more productive and is going to protect their property. Like I said, I think the only thing that it was a challenge for us, because we were trying to get together and to bring the private sector, maybe to get some incentive. It was very difficult because, you know, with the sunshine law, we only can be able to do it there. We couldn't get and discuss anything that was discussed in the meeting or prior, or anything that was part of it. As far as that, I guess that you're very familiar. You're all bound by the same law. So.
Would you mind if, does anyone have, Commissioner Vizcarra, do you have any questions?
But did we have other members?
Well, I meant questions of Patricia, or do you guys want to just all maybe
I
stand up
thought
together?
Maybe they all speak and then.
And then we'll have questions, yes.
Yeah.
If Patricia, if you don't mind just kind of staying close.
Hello, my name is Felix Kisner. I live on 250 174th Street, Winston Towers 100, apartment 1904, for the record. That means, I know this is not my first time, I have to introduce myself. But basically, I think what these committees do is really refocus the needs of our individual city. There are many plans out there that other cities have, and when we're talking about the environment, it's a very, very tricky issue, because everyone understands that the environment is, in a way, our lifestyle. And there's so many aspects we could have tackled. But we felt like what this any commission like this allows us to do is to focus on something that's achievable, has a timeline attached to it, and has a long-lasting impact on the city. So definitely, I would say whoever you're going to choose, or if you're going to continue, it is something that will benefit the city and help it focus on the customization of what this city requires, not just the state. We know there's a lot of environmental state laws, there are other things, but the committee says, okay, let's take part what works, what doesn't work, and apply it. We didn't invent a new wheel. We didn't reinvent. We worked with what others did and tried to improve and customize to the city's needs. So my feeling is, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commission definitely have that. As far as any kind of SWOT analysis, our strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities, I would say it could be improved. There's a lot of room for improvements. There's some suggestions. But otherwise, it serves its purpose, and we have something that we can show, and we can move on that has an impact and can have a long-lasting impact for years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mariana, did you want to come up? Don't go far, please.
Hi, I'm Mariana Talevsky. I serve on the MAPSA committee. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Office of City Clerk of being so patient with us and accommodating our numerous meetings, and City Manager's Office also providing the staff, and of course the Commission. I think the committees are very beneficial. I do like that each committee had a targeted thing. It was not like Commissioner Vizcarra mentioned, everybody just came to socialize towards the end of the older committees. I believe that my committee, we have accomplished a lot. We could have probably accomplished more, but again, because of the sunshine constraints, we weighed a lot of different things, and the red light camera is one of the things that we thought was most important thing to provide, as well as scrambling intersections, turning light, because I believe that traffic as the city is growing more and more and more. Pedestrian safety is one of the most important things. Every single day, we see the pedestrians against cars, pedestrians against scooters, motor scooters. So there's a lot of things we can still look into. The social media department's been great. I'm so happy the police department is growing a lot. When we first started a year ago in January, there was a lot more issues, and now I see some of the issues have been resolved, but I would like to keep serving on this committee, and if you guys decide to keep us around or whatever, I believe the committees can contribute a lot. It also gives people the opportunity of civil engagement. Unfortunately, I remember in the years past when we had our committee meetings, it was open to public and more people have shown up. Lately, I've noticed we had few visitors, but not as many, but maybe also because we were meeting in the morning. I remember with our older committees, we were having evening meetings, but I know it's more complicated with the staff staying over hours. So I would like to ask you and to encourage you to keep the committees going. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to say?
I have one question.
Just
Marianne?
let him speak, and then we'll ask them.
Well, she was up at the,
She'll back come, well,
Sorry, my name's Ken Percy. I was also on the MAPSAC committee, and what we were able to do, we believe, was actually identify and focus on a wide range of items that were then brought down to a priority. Red light cameras obviously was one of the key ones, and that dialogue, the different views of the members was very important in being able to come up with something balanced for the city, because pedestrian safety is something that is an iterative thing. It's constantly changing. Every time we change an intersection, it has an impact on pedestrian safety. So I would encourage the committee to be continued.
thank you. Okay, Commissioner Vizcarra, did you want to start?
Would you say that, I guess I would ask this of both committees, what you were tasked to do, is that completed? Are you done?
Okay, just come up and please to the microphone.
Well, in the ISAC meeting, we try and we got, like Felix mentioned, we had many other issues that we wanted to tackle, but we picked the master plan. He's done, it's completely, it's just waiting for you guys to approve it. It's completely done.
Okay, so you can say you were given your task, you finished.
Yes.
Okay, and MAPSAC, you condensed your list, and would you say that you completed your task this year?
So we identified about 30 items, which we consolidated into 10 that were key items. There are only a couple that we were able to give real solid recommendations on. We believe that, as I said before, this is an iterative thing. Continuation of that dialogue will produce better information for the Commission.
And what would you say is next on your list? Or is that for us to give them? I mean, that would be for us, but I know you guys had your condensed list, so what were you guys thinking or recommend is next on the list?
So we concentrated, the 30 became 10 and we concentrated on the top 3. We'd then be looking at 4 through 7 as the next items that we would want to be able to provide report and recommendation on.
Okay.
Vice Mayor, I
that's
know
all for me.
you were very eager to speak, so please go
Yes.
ahead.
So Ken, besides the sunshine issue, what was the largest detriment regarding your group achieving what you were looking to do originally?
It was a very collaborative series of discussions, and to be able to condense 30 items down into 3 really meaningful items and a shorter list of 10 was, I think, a great achievement. The sunshine issue is the largest one because we're, as Mariana said, we're sort of meeting in the morning for an hour and a half, 2 hours, once a month. Without tasking each other to go and do something and bring it to the meeting, you can't have that dialogue to be able to provide a little bit more. We're quite happy for the meetings to be open to the public and have the public there, but Sunshine was definitely a challenge for us to be able to complete what we did last year.
So the number of meetings that you accomplished in a year wasn't a detriment? That if you would have had more meetings, wouldn't you have accomplished more?
Yes, absolutely. I would absolutely love to see 2 meetings a month.
Or 3?
I think that's too much.
Too much?
Well, because we're all volunteers and we all have other draws on our time. Getting the 5 of us together was that was a little bit of a challenge at times. So 2 meetings a month I think would be a good target.
I'm now trying to get the commission to meet 3 times a month.
Okay, take it easy. Did you have more questions?
That would be it.
Commissioner Stuyvesant?
Well, I believe that you guys did a very good job and you delivered, like the recommendation for the red light cameras and also the master dome plan. I think it's a little bit unfair to allocate all the money of the $5,000 of the consultant to the committee because we will need it anyway. We need a master dome plan regardless. So when we say that we spend over $7,000 in the ESAC committee, I don't think it's fair just to allocate the full $5,000 of the consultant to the committee per se. Also, if they need recommendations, there are things that they are on your list that you already had the time to talk about it. For the ESAC, if they need a recommendation, I would recommend them to work this year in the beach walk and to see if it's viable. I know that there are studies. It was a committee many years ago, but things have changed. Legislation has changed, so maybe we can consider that again. For the MAPSAC, I don't remember if it was in your list, but also to alleviate a little bit of the traffic in the street, maybe we could consider the water taxi, like other municipalities, they have it. So there is so much to be done, and the committees give the opportunity to the citizens and the residents to participate. So it helps for that civic engagement. I'm pretty sure that you learn a lot of how the government functions by doing this. And by the way, we are all subject to also the sunshine law. Okay, so you see how of a challenge it is. So if at some time people misunderstand why we don't know what we don't know when we come here, because we don't have the opportunity also to speak between us. So, but you can only get that kind of training by being in the committees or even being in the Residence Academy with Commissioner Vizcarra. So having said that, I would like to if it's up to me to give a recommendation, my recommendation will be to open the appointments or open whatever needs to be open to reappoint them or appoint the new people for the committees, and also to open the appointment for the Youth Advisory Committee, because we do have it open, or at least in an ordinance, and we had never appointed that committee. There are so many resources for this committee, at least the youth one, specifically with the Florida League of Cities, and I think we are doing a disservice to our youth by not being part of it. In a nutshell, I can tell you that they have an annual conference program. They go to Tallahassee as well, the Youth Council for Legislation Action Days. They do community service contests, they do grants, they can apply for scholarships, etc. So it is already pre-done by the Florida League of Cities. We are part of it. I've been learning a lot through them and taking their workshops. They're going through many of their trainings, and it is there. And we have the ordinance. So I would like to see it open for our youth. I congratulate for the work that you guys did, and I would like to see open to the committee's appointments for the ESAC and the MAPSAC. And thank you for your service.
Commissioner Lama?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for all your work. I mean, people need to understand that the scope of the work and the subject you're dealing with, it's huge. I mean, it's a huge undertaking. You're looking at pedestrian safety, you're looking at environmental improvements and mitigation. So I applaud you for all your efforts. I think your suggestions were great. And yeah, the Sunshine Law is something that I feel and is something that kind of hampers that free flow of information, that brainstorming. And fun fact is that the legislators in Tallahassee are not subject to the Sunshine Law. So they could go to lunch and talk about whatever they like, but we are bound by the Sunshine Law. So, but regardless, yeah, I fully support committees. If obviously they do have a very clear direction and goals, and I believe that continuity is very, very important. So yeah, I would like to see these committees, continue forever. I mean, I've talked to some municipalities that have a very strong program regarding committees, and they do help. They work very well hand in hand with municipalities and also with the county. So yes, I would like to see this continue. And thank you again.
Thank you, Commissioner Lama. I want to say that I agree with a lot of what's being said, specifically that you all took the time and you've sat here now for a few hours, really shows it's a testament to your dedication to this and the fact that you want to be involved. And I do agree 100% that you have to be super focused. That's something that I advocated for a long time ago, was having committees that are specific to one need or one requirement. The Sunshine Law is a challenge, and I think that that has been a question for me, because it does make it difficult for you, and it puts you in a position, and you're legally bound to follow certain rules. Would you be able to continue to do the work as a standalone, meaning without not being bound by Sunshine? Do you think that you can organize yourselves on your own, or does it require for there to be city staff?
I personally prefer to have city staff, so this way we do have some minutes and some kind of accountability. I mean, there is a way to figure it out. I mean, our committee did meet few times, twice a month. We tried in the summer, and it worked, and then we're back to monthly, then we skipped a month or so. I mean, I'm just used to the committees with Sunshine. I don't know exactly how we coordinate and everything. It was just citizen involvement if we don't have a committee. So I would prefer to stay the way it is. I mean, we managed to deal with, the city staff was amazing. We managed to deal with the Sunshine. We just had to, know that we can only discuss the things when we're together and everything else, and everybody just could do stuff on their own. And we were able to say, okay, Ken will do this, and I'll do that, and Pavel will do that. And I think together, my personal committee, we got along very well, and we accomplished a lot. We actually had a really, really fantastic group. And it was a very good input because a lot of us came from different cultures and stuff. And it was like a melting pot committee, but I think our personal committee was great. And there's so much more left unaccomplished, like Fabiola mentioned, Commissioner Stuyvesant mentioned. The water tax, it's one of my things that I've been wanting for a long time. And I personally looked into some different resources collaboration. It would probably cost city some money, but what is the possibility we can get together? Because Fort Lauderdale has a water tax, and they have a free one, and they have the one that people pay for, and operating wonderful. And I think if we could get the water tax, because we do have a dock by Bella Vista Park? I mean, I'm sure it's not going to be just so easy accomplished, but just think about if people could, instead of getting in their car and going to downtown Miami or whatever, they can just jump on the boat and go to Bayside or go to Fort Lauderdale. Same thing, people from the other areas come here. And I know that, crazy development is being, not now, but being built in Coastal Mall, which is going to be amazing. But imagine if the people from that development just could get on the boat and just come over here if they want to go to the beach instead of driving, bringing more traffic into our city. So,
Right, no, I agree. I think that you all have a lot of good ideas. My concern is the, the staffing issue, because this is what I've heard over and over, is that we're having a hard time staffing, and that people are stretched thin. So I do agree with you, Commissioner Stuyvesant, that $5,000 isn't specific to them. You're absolutely right, but it's more the hours. So if the city, and this is the whole purpose of a workshop, is to have a discussion, if the space was facilitated, and if you got some assistance with the scheduling, it's just the time that it takes, because the requirement, if I can ask the city attorney, what is the requirement from the city of an official committee versus, let's just call it, and look, let me just say for the record, it is good government to have something that has a lot of structure. I absolutely agree that
Right.
having the minutes, having the historical is important, but at the same time, I want to be respectful of the fact that it is resources, and we have to all agree that we would probably need to, we would have to have serious resources attached to it to allow you to continue your work and meet twice a month or whatever.
right.
So what is
we only, excuse me, Mayor, we only spent, like, our committee, the only resource was the staff, it was only $3,500. We did not need any consultants, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of things we can do with the other consultants, but the city already had hired other consultants anyway. And I believe that the city is spending a lot of money in so many events and parties and different things, that $3,500, and we met 12 times, which is plenty. I mean, I think the $3,500 investment is like a little, very, very minimal when you have to deal with pedestrian safety. I just don't know. I mean, if city attorney can answer, how would that deal if we're not in the sunshine? We still want to report to you guys, we want to make like some kind of resolutions, how would it work? If we're not an appointed committee and we're not within sunshine, how would it all work?
Do you have something?
Should I make a suggestion?
Sure, go ahead.
So one of the things I suggested was that we'd like to meet twice a month, and maybe the staff members facilitate every second one of those, so that's reported, but we have a more free-flowing, and we can do those discussions and share the ideas, so that we're more focused in the meeting with the staff members involved that are recorded. We can do the what-ifs.
Right, no, I believe that the more participation, the better. It's just, what is our requirement based on the law, and how can we continue this, and at the same time understand that it's not just the cost that's associated with it, it's the hours. So the time that the city clerk's office is facilitating the meetings or writing the minutes is the time that they're not doing something else. So potentially this may require adding to the clerk's office even on a part-time basis.
If they are advising the commission, it doesn't matter what you call them, they're going to be subject to the sunshine. So anytime they're in an advisory capacity, it doesn't matter if they're appointed by the commission, or if they're selected by staff. If they're gathering together to give recommendations to the city, they're going to be governed by the sunshine.
May I ask
Sure.
a question? When you have a committee and subcommittees within that, are the subcommittees subject to sunshine?
Yes.
Okay.
So how would that work because I agree with Commissioner Stuyvesant, allowing to have a youth council would be great, because that is something that I've always wanted as well. How would we have minors be subject to sunshine? How would that work? How do other cities do this?
They would be subject to sunshine. The it's not going to be 7-year-old children. They're
No, the
teenagers.
teens,
They'll
yeah.
understand, you explain to them the implications. But my understanding is that they do fine in other jurisdictions. And
But could
I
it be
haven't-
a council and not a committee?
even if you call it a council, if
Still,
they're making
okay, yeah.
recommendations, no matter how you characterize it, we can't circumvent Sunshine by saying, oh, they're a council, not a
Right.
committee.
If I may, if we, because I know we went through this, right, and we brought this forward, and we had the Sunshine concern with regards to the youth, and then we turned, isn't that why we have the teen talk? We turned it into teen talk to make it more like the senior roundtable, because we had the same concerns with the seniors. We want them to express and freely talk to each other and bring more informally their concerns. So, and I think I sent you guys, didn't I think, because I saw the same things from the youth, and they had the videos and the competitions, and I thought, oh, well, maybe that's something that our teen group can bring forward in some way, maybe not necessarily being an advisory committee, or maybe do something more internally, but allowing them those opportunities without going in the advisory path. I have that issue with the youth, because it's the kind of thing where, like, we know they're gonna, they're gonna trip up, and we're just not gonna do anything about it, and we'll, and I don't like that. But okay, we can explore it. We're looking at the balance of the balancing of interests. We want community involvement. I always say, like, you need to build your bench. We went for a while that we had no committees, and there was no, there was no growing of future leadership, future anything. It was just, and then COVID made it complicated and everything. And so, my concern was always, where is the next commissioner coming from? Like, where are our future leaders coming from? If they've never been in any way involved, if you've never had to work with Sunshine in any capacity, you're going to have a really hard time when you're sitting on this side. It's very difficult when this is the first time you experience it. It's good if you have practice somewhere else, and it is horrible. It makes things 10 times more difficult. So I'm okay with people getting practice with that inconvenience somewhere else, because hopefully that's where our future leaders are going to come from, and you're going to come in already with that skill and knowing how to reach out to staff instead of to people you shouldn't be reaching out to. So I'm okay with that. But I also understand that there is a demand on staff. We can't play with the names. If you're in an advisory way, you have to get that support. So, now, Val, I think it was a conversation I had with you. I don't remember what a standing committee is, and so instead of having multiple committees, you can have one committee with designated subcommittee, so we're not having to schedule 20 meetings, maybe just schedule one and have the subcommittees maybe break off. Can you explain how that works generally? Or I may be combining concepts, but maybe we can combine the ideas.
So I can, and I think I understand what you're trying to say. So basically, it's the same concept that we had.
That makes one of us.
So basically, it's the same concept that we had with the city advisory, where it was an all-encompassing committee that had the responsibility of tackling issues such as long-range planning, pedestrian safety, a number of different issues. The problem with that committee is that they didn't have one clear task to focus on.
We
Right? They
didn't have any. We were not given. My problem with the CAC was it was a fishing expedition. It was just go out there and find something. Like we were not given direction. I think in retrospect, we were probably supposed to be getting it. And also we had a way of signing up to, like I like the way we've been doing it, that people sign up with a particular background, and as opposed to just whoever the commissioner happens to know. There weren't people just signing up, so we had systems in place that we weren't using. And I'm sorry because I interrupted you.
No, that's okay.
But it's I was very frustrated with the CAC because it was supposed to be that training ground for commissioners, but really it was a fishing expedition and nobody brought their fishing pole. Like, it was very, it just had no direction. So that's why we switched then to the subject-specific committees, which have been very effective, but it's had the unintended consequence of weighing heavily on staff. So a balancing act would look like what?
So it would be, the alternative would be to go back to a structure where it's similar to what the CAC was, where they had these, or they had the ability to be able to address or consider different range of topics or different issues that they could address and
That we would give them, that the city would give?
No, I'm talking historically what happened
Oh,
with
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
CAC. So they had, a range of issues that they could tackle and make recommendations onto the commission. The problem, as you stated, and as we've mentioned previously in this meeting, is that if you don't give the committees a clear task to focus on, then it just opens it up for them to be able to go off on different, subjects and not necessarily things that affect the city as a whole versus something that may be personal to them, to the committee member itself. So with that said, if the intent is just to have one all-encompassing committee and then have subcommittees, they would still be subject to the Sunshine Law. The problem that with the subcommittees is that even though it's a part of the bigger committee, the CAC, let's say in this case, filling those subcommittees would be the responsibility of
The chair.
not the chair,
Of
the
that.
person that's assigned as a liaison for that subcommittee. And being that it's not directly, how do I say it? It's not a direct line to the city itself. It's a little bit harder to fill and to gain people to come and join those subcommittees, which is a problem that the CAC was having, because at
Right.
one point they tried to form subcommittees, but they were having a hard time trying to find the people that would volunteer their time to serve on these subcommittees.
But in this case, we already have different members of different committees. So that
Right.
I would assume would be members of those subcommittees.
They
Now,
would.
I don't know what problem we're solving here. I'm just kind of thinking out loud, but
Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking if so that if all the committees function as one with subcommittees where they can break off and do their thing, open to the public, then maybe it would cut the burden on staff, like in half.
If I-
Okay, so let me backtrack a little bit, and, the city attorney can correct me if I'm wrong. The only time that a committee would not be subject to the Sunshine Law if it's purely a fact-finding committee, meaning that they're handed, let's say, for example, the beach walk. They're tasked with researching the feasibility of a beach walk. They come and they present all the information to the commission for the commission to make the decision. They're not making any type of recommendation, whether it's for or against any topic, and using the beach walk as an example. So that would be the only caveat to the Sunshine Law. I don't know if necessarily that would serve the committees themselves or the commission, whatever the word is.
Would that require staff to be at the meeting?
It's not a sunshine meeting, so it wouldn't require staff.
So if they, for instance, had a list based on whatever list you already have, and so that we were, I'm addressing actually the city attorney, and the commission said, give us the facts on the beach walk. How would that actually work in practice? Would that work?
It could work, but then they cannot make any recommendations. They can't rank them. They can't give any recommendations at all. They would literally just be putting information together in a document and say, this is what exists in other jurisdictions.
Well,
Here you go.
okay. All right.
I have a comment.
Yes, go ahead, Marianne.
I mean, Mauricio mentioned different committees, and I've served with different committees, and originally, our first committees were same like the committee that maps up in EXAC, like I was on the school committee, we had boardwalk committee with specific committees, and that was the fast and productive way. Once the school was opened, and once the boardwalk, we found out that the boardwalk was not happening, that's when they decided, and the other committees were just like meeting. And and actually the Senior Citizen Committee was very good, but then they decided to go on their own, and that's the Danish group right now. And so basically, when they started doing the CAC committee, that was the least productive committee. Now this year, again, I kind of see what we used to do years ago when we had specific committees and people were meeting just for that. It worked the best. I was in CAC, and for years we tried to get the subcommittee, but the problem is, if like you mentioned, we have the same meeting, but we break off. So let's say MAPSAC and ESAC put together, and it's whatever, 10 members or whatever you guys decide, and we're together, but then we have to break off in the separate committees, and we're still in sunshine, then we're gonna have one of the city clerks, and somebody else gonna have somebody else recording our minutes and everything else. I just don't think it's productive. I would rather have a committee and have strict, okay, we'll meet 9 times or 12 times or 6 times a year if funding is so difficult, but I would rather have a regular committee in the sunshine. Fact-finding committee is great, I think we possibly had that, but we cannot have any discussions, we cannot make recommendations, we can't tell you what we think. We're gonna say, okay, we found A, B, and C, look at it. But for that, you already have staff. So I think, me personally, I would prefer to have the committees exactly the way they are. When you guys have your teen talk and the senior citizen roundtable, it's different. I would also like having teens being in sunshine is difficult, but you know what, we learned. We learned to deal with sunshine. It's not so difficult. I mean, you guys are doing it all the time.
Yeah, I if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and specifically about the teen talk and the teen committee. I'm a mom of 3 teenagers. They're more they're more resourceful than we might think. And for example, my daughter, she was in the Miami-Dade County committee for the youth when she was 15 years old. So, and they managed with the sunshine, etc. But specifically about the teen talk, I don't know any of you attended. I had attended, and the kids, they go for the free food, and they love it. The first time it was Chick-fil-A. The second time it was, I think, chicken nuggets or chicken whatever from another place, and they were complaining because it was not Chick-fil-A. But they were there and they were happy and they were hanging out, but it was not a productive conversation. With having the title of being part of a committee, it also comes the commitment to it. So it's the commitment to sit down, to work together. It gives them another layer of feeling more important, specifically for the teens, to wanting to produce something. And again, there are so much resources available for them that they're missing to those resources. So I believe that we are having this conversation, and the main issue is the budget and the city clerk's office, that he might need extra personnel to deal with the committee. Right now we're going to be working in the budget in no time, so maybe we should consider that and expanding. If you need more people, and that's basically it, then we need more positions to be open in the city clerk's office. I believe the city clerk's office is one of the offices that function the best in the city, so I congratulate you for that. You have so much on your shoulder, and I believe that you probably are understaffed. So if that's the conversation that we're having, and given the magnitude of our budget, I think it's a no-brainer just to consider hiring more people so we can continue having the services that we have, and having the communities and the engagement from the citizens and their participation in government. Thank you.
I'd like to add, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
And also, I mean, I do think we need to keep committees, so I guess I'm willing to explore how they may look, but we do need to keep them, not just for the civic engagement and the growing our future leaders part, but also there are grants and federal dollars out there that are conditional on us having committees related to that subject area, and I can't think of, I mean, certainly environmental things, Susan, right? And I'm probably like with the bridge, I remember we had a grant, and you probably needed committees for that. So there's money out there that we can chase that we won't qualify for if we can't show. And it's not like, the committee that we put together in an emergency meeting yesterday. Like, you have to show that you have a history of having this kind of setup. So that's another reason for keeping it. I'm willing to entertain a different vision to balance the interests. Another way to balance it is just to add more staff, but we're not there right now. So then how do we solve it for the next round? If we're going to keep them, we have to make the appointments tomorrow, I guess, or next month. So what's the answer for now?
So,
May I add something?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so they've been together for a year, and the way I see it is that it's worked, and it's working the way it's set up right now. Could we look at different variation? Yes, but I think that, like you said, we need to make a decision. I think that what they're dealing with it's a lot of heavy subjects, let's say, subjects that take a lot of time. The sunshine law is a hindrance, but obviously, like you suggested, you could meet twice a month, perhaps. And let me ask you a question, Mauricio. Do you need to be present at all the meetings? Yes, right? By the office, does someone?
Someone from my office.
Someone needs to record the minutes and be there because obviously it is
It's a sunshine
bound by
meeting, yeah.
sunshine. Okay, all right. So so you're looking at two committees in particular at this point that will meet twice a month. You're looking at perhaps 4 meetings per month. Yes, but I think that it is working right now the way it's set up, and my belief is that we should continue the way it is. And perhaps, with more time, as the year progresses, we could, tweak it and play around with different variations to enhance it, let's say. That's my opinion.
Maybe the sort of second meeting each month is one that has somebody that's just purely a note taker for the minutes from your office, rather than more of a heavy presence. So it's not so expensive. And then the next meeting, this is what we discussed, as the notes, this is what we discussed in the interim meeting, and this is where we're going, and that's the more detailed set of minutes, but you've got something on the record that complies with the requirements. We actually don't have any problem with sunshine, and we don't have any problem with people sort of sitting in if they want to come. What we're lacking is time to have those discussions to get, we'd like to be able to do twice as much work in the year, not just the work that we can get to with one meeting. A couple of times we'd wanted meetings and we couldn't get the room or the staff or whatever, so it was like 4 or 5 weeks out rather than when we're available. And of course, Pavel has to sort of travel in as well. So, we all have I go to the UK almost every 5 or 6 weeks. So we have to work around our own schedules as well. So if we could maybe have somebody that satisfies the requirements, but doesn't need to be such an important member of your team that can produce a decent set of minutes.
Okay, so,
Mayor?
go ahead.
May I ask a question of our city attorney? Could a standing committee, CAC, have members appointed by the commission that have a specific task, like a MAPSAC and ESAC, and then they have the subcommittee, but they are a fact-finding committee, and they bring the facts to the advisory committee considers everything there, and then advises the commission?
I think so.
And I can add to
Yeah.
that.
That's what I was trying to say.
And I guess that's what I was trying to say also, and I didn't do a good job at it.
I was trying to say it
So-
first.
Everyone's going to
And
take
that's-
credit for the deputy manager's idea. Okay, go ahead, city clerk.
So that's what I was trying to explain. So that's what the CAC, however long it's been, I don't know, more than 5 years, that's what they tried to do towards the end, where they had the I guess for lack of a better word, the big committee, the main committee, and then each individual committee member tried to create their own subcommittee that was with the idea of just being a fact-finding committee, but they still had the problem with finding the volunteers to fill those subcommittees. Because remember, 2 members of that same board cannot serve on the subcommittee because they would be breaking the sunshine. So they would need to find separate members that are not affiliated with the big committee, and perform those fact-finding duties. So it's a 2-part problem. One, it's the sunshine restriction, and then two, having the ability to be able to fill those appointments on those subcommittees.
And
I have
just to add, we'd also
questions.
have to amend our code to allow for committees to have subcommittees, because currently they don't have that authority under our code.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
The last time that there was a CAC, what did it accomplish?
So
That's a very loaded question, so.
One of the things that came out of the CAC is the Social Seniors 501c3. It started off in that committee. They were able to form a lot of programs and a lot of events. It got so big to the point where they just needed to break off and become a 501c3 so that they can, do fundraisers and generate their own revenue and be able to hold bigger events and bigger programs.
And how long was that CAC in effect?
I don't remember off the top of my head. Do you remember, Mayor? I'm sorry, Mayor.
Senior committee, I believe, was kind of standalone, and then Dennis, when the CAC was formed, Dennis was representing the seniors, but I think they left us after year 1 or 2, because the moment it got bigger and they needed to do fundraising and things like that, they pretty much started working with Susan and Sylvia, and then they decided to split from the committee because they wanted to make some money, whatever, 501c, that's what came in, but they were the first one that, left the CAC, but they didn't leave it within the city. They kind of left the city. They're standalone, completely not part of the city. The city just keeps giving them money every year. But they're not in Sunshine. They're not a committee that's reporting to the city. They pretty much Dennis just resigned, left the committee, and took his committee somewhere else. So that's basically what happened. I mean, I don't really believe that CAC, we tried, but what happened with CAC as new members were being appointed, they wanted to try the same things over and over, that we already had the answer for. We already knew that now you can't do the boardwalk, you can't do this, and you can't take over the road. So it just, I don't know, I left earlier than Commissioner Vizcarra was there. It was just not very, very productive. It was hard to get together. I mean, again, I don't necessarily think that we need to meet 24 times a year, twice a month, maybe sometimes twice a month. But if we have a total of 12 meetings a year, because, in August there was no meetings, one of the times we have, because of the summer break or whatever, we have hard time getting the quorum. So I think if we're given 12 times, a year and just meet with those, we can do anywhere between 9 to 12. I mean, I know at one point CAC was meeting every other month, which I don't think was our committees. If we're tasked with something, is sufficient enough. So I think two to 1 times a month, that's what we need. And depends how, we progress and what we can accomplish.
Okay. So, thank you, everyone. I have a few questions, but I also want to clarify some things. First of all, Commissioner Vizcarra, I think that you've done a really great job with the Citizens Academy as far as engaging, residents. And just for the record, I don't agree necessarily that you need the committees to foster civic engagement and, to build up our leaders, because I think half of us never even sat on the committees. I think that it's fair to say that people can become, commissioners even if they did not sit on these committees. However, you're absolutely right. They does help for the citizens to really understand how to take an idea from just a conversation on social media and really bring it to a place where it can be effectuated. My concern is only one, and that's the budgetary concern. And again, not just the money associated with it, how do you actually find someone, the staff to do this? And I believe this is something that we need to discuss in our budget, because if we want to grow this, and I would like to see a youth council or whatever, I understand committee, how do we manage that within our budget? Because we can't do everything, right? Like we talked about the red light cameras, and that it would increase the amount of meetings the city clerk's office would have to attend. So now we're going to be, adding to that. What does that mean as far as the structure of the city clerk's office?
But if I may, the red light camera is a new thing. The committees are existing and were considered in our last budget, right? So, and the staffing and all of that, I assume, was factored in. I guess the problem is that the demand exceeded our budget, Is that the problem? So maybe what we need to do is, put limits around it and say, okay, you're gonna get 8
Right.
meetings, or.
Exactly. I
And to
think-
make sure that we
Yeah.
can properly, because the committees were already in existence when we did the budget. And it sounds like we agree that we should keep them, but the concern is the staffing of them.
Right, I don't
the
think it's
expense around
the dollars associated with it. I think that it's, like you said, it's the demand exceeded the supply. And it's the hours, because, the city clerk and I talked about this, it's not just the hours that his office spends on it, it's they're not doing something else while they're doing that. And not to say this isn't important work, it is, but especially with everything else, and if we're adding to it, I just want to have a really honest conversation about what is it that you all can really manage as far as the staff is concerned. What is, let's be very clear and not just make promises based on, what we want, because we'll ask you for a lot then. So what would you say to that? What is your recommendation?
Well, I think having it as part of the budget discussion is good. In terms of our staffing, it does take away a significant amount of time. But we leave it up to you to direct us. And especially if you're talking about increasing the number of committees that we have or increasing the number of meetings that we have.
So would we feel comfortable then kind of putting some guardrails on this and sort of maintaining, because we already basically missed 2 months, right? So would it work to have 8 meetings a year for now, and then to see what happens?
Can I just,
until we
Mayor, if I-
can,
I was going to say, the ordinance provides that they shall meet monthly unless directed or required by the city manager. It used to be bi-monthly, that was actually changed in 2022, but it used to be every other month, and then it was changed to be monthly.
But how can you require a volunteer committee to meet monthly? If they can't make it, then they can't make it. You can't force them.
Well, because the way it was before, the code was, they had to meet a minimum, I think, of 6 times, or they can't, sorry, it was the other way around. They cannot exceed 6 meetings per year.
Okay.
So then that was revised to give them more flexibility to be able to meet more often, right? There's no cap, and you
But
shall meet
sh-
monthly unless
But
otherwise by the
shall-
city manager.
Doesn't shall mean must?
But then it says unless otherwise, let me pull up the code, 'cause
Okay.
now I don't want to misstate what the language is.
Mayor, while she's looking that up, may I ask, so just for the sake of, based on what you said about the Youth Advisory Council through the FLC and traveling to Tallahassee and things like that, none of that was budgeted for. So if there is going to be like that level of involvement by a youth committee, we would definitely need to come back to you with a budget amendment for that.
Or factor it in for the next year.
For next year, yes.
Anyway, the Tallahassee trip, it was for April, so they will not even have the time, yeah. But it's perfect, because now we can consider, now that we're going to be working in the budget for next year.
Yes.
And for the new personnel, also for the city clerk's office as well. I just want to see it moving forward. I would like that we can, if we have the consent, that we want to continue having the committees, because that's what we have also in our code, just to clarify, give the directions to make the appointments, sooner than later, so they don't have to lose that time. And now it's giving us the time as well to whatever, anything that needs to be adapted due to the reality of the time that is consuming from your office is going to give us now the time to correct that situation. But I believe that the committees are already decided, and we just need to appoint the people.
So just for clarification, this is still open to the public, correct? There's just still a process so online. So do we, just so that I understand the process, it's open for people to apply. It's not necessarily, correct?
It's not an ongoing opening, I guess, so to speak.
But what's the rule, I meant, what is
So-
the rule? So it's open to the public, and then we can just take from the people that applied, or do we?
Right. So you're not limited to the pool of applicants. You can appoint anyone that you want.
That doesn't even apply?
Right. So we prefer for the appointments to be made from the pool of applicants, because, we do ask for certain criteria to be met. But it's not a requirement of the commission to pick someone from there. There was something else that I was going to mention.
But
and
I
it's
do
still in
believe
my-
they do still have to apply. So if you have somebody in mind, they still have to
Yes,
complete
yes.
an application.
Right.
So
Okay, I would
So
just like
let
to
me
say
provide a
something
little bit
else.
more context. So what's happened before, or happened this past year, specifically with the ESAC and the MAPSAC, is that we put a call out to applicants. So we put out sort of like a job opening, a job posting, where we listed what the criteria were, what we were looking for, what they were expected to do as a member of the committee, and we invited the people interested to apply to these committees. We then put that together and presented it to the commission so that they all can make a selection from that pool of applicants. Most of the people that were appointed to both committees, I'll say that everyone that was appointed to these committees were part of the applicants. There were some instances where there were some people that had not applied when the opening was posted, and ended up turning in an application after the opening had closed. But again, to Valerie's point, they do need to submit an application at some point. But again, the commission is not limited to the pool applicants. They can select anyone, basically.
Okay, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
I would just like to say that we have to determine what is the purpose of each particular committee. If it's just for the sake of having a committee, then, what does that really do for us? If they only meet, several times a year, then what are they going to accomplish? There's no purpose in having a committee if there's not a defined accomplishment at the end of their term.
Right, and
We've had that.
I agree
We've
with
just
you, yeah.
Had several people on committees, even on our CRC, that don't show up. And, they have to understand the criteria, what's required of them, are they serious? And, because basically we're having committees to take a certain part of our work away and report to us. So we're waiting for committees to report to us. And then if you're going to have subcommittees that are waiting for the committee to be reported to, we're never going to accomplish anything regarding that subject. It's just time is going to go by. We're on the commission to accomplish things. That's why I'm saying that we ourselves need to meet more often in order to accomplish more for the residents. Meeting once a month at our regular commission meeting does not allow us to speak and accomplish anything for the residents. I would say 3 times, including the commission meeting, is what we need to have going forward.
So I'm definitely going to need more
May-
staff.
Mayor, as a point of order, if I may.
Yes, please go, city attorney, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So the meeting schedule for committees is that they shall meet monthly unless otherwise directed by the city manager. So, and I think if I recall correctly, it was done that way so that if they don't have anything at hand to really be working on, the city manager had the flexibility to say there's no need to call a meeting. It also provides that additional special meetings may be held with the approval of either the city commission or the city manager. So if they had something that was going to be very intensive, then the city manager had the authority to say, okay, you can meet more than once a month.
Yeah. My concern is, again, are we creating, like what you said, what is our goal? What are we doing here? And you're right, to a certain extent, you're right, it does take longer, but back to what Commissioner Vizcarra says, it then provides more civic engagement from the public, because it's not just what we personally think is a good idea. We want the public to engage, but then it could take a long time. My concern is growing departments, and then ultimately, what are we doing? We're adding to the budget, because our next item that we're going to speak on is another item that's going to have an effect on staff, and again, adding to the budget. So we kind of have to be very careful, or not kind of, we absolutely need to be careful with what it is we're choosing to be the priority, even though we want to do a lot of things, because ultimately, we have to be good stewards of the public's money, and all of this does have an impact, whether it be financial or resources as far as the hours are concerned, the research that's associated with it. So I think from my point of view, I really need the city manager's office to come up with a solid recommendation of what you all think is, and what you are able to accomplish with what we currently have on staff, based on what we have asked, specifically, now adding, to it with a youth committee, for next year, whatever that may be. And then taking into account, for instance, what sort of things, for instance, do you believe, Vice Mayor, were delayed as a result of this? And how do you think that could have been changed if we didn't have a committee? Because what I'm hearing from these folks is that they're very, very interested in staying
Yes,
on.
and I understand. And not to take anything away from the ESAC committee or the MAPSAC committee, but I believe that if the commission was meeting more often, we could have taken on issues and resolved them much more quickly through our discussions and our ordinances than all the time that we waited for the MAPSAC or ESAC committees. The ESAC also, because they didn't have enough meetings and the participants themselves didn't have the time, they never went and spoke to condos to enlist other condos to get involved with the Dune project. Is that correct?
Well, not really. Because, for example, in my building,
Yes.
we went and we present all the plans and master plan. The problem is that you need to be an advocate. In order to be an advocate, is certain things that limit us as far as the committee. We did the most, we didn't, so it's true that sometimes, I think it was one instant that we didn't have quorum, right? In the whole meetings that we had, it was only one time that we didn't have enough people and we have to cancel that session. But other than that, everybody showed off and it was very, very productive.
Right, but I had discussions with your committee regarding who was going out and speaking with other condos that are not currently involved in the Dune project.
The thing is
And
that
people said that they didn't have the time to go speak to building managers. Is that correct?
We are not able to go and present the master Dune plan as per se because it haven't been approved yet.
No, but just to enlist other buildings. Right now, I think, what is it, Ocean 4? Which ocean buildings are involved?
Oceania.
Okay, Oceania, okay.
Yes.
So the idea is to have gone out to other buildings, presenting to them the involvement that Oceania has, and try to enlist them just in the idea even, but no one did that.
I
ever.
did that in my building, for example.
Okay.
I live in Trump Royale.
Yes.
I went to the management, I meet with the board a couple times, they saw the plans, and they're in the process. It is, it's a lot going on in the building, but they are in the process to use the plans that we recommend from the palette
Right.
of the master plan do.
Okay,
And that was the idea to do, but our meeting was cut short. We didn't meet in December. We were supposed to have a last meeting in December, but that meeting was cut short. And that was our last meeting accomplishment, to get together and be out there and advocate for the plan that we
Right.
have accomplished. It was not possible because, like I said, it was cut short.
I think, Madam Mayor, you raised a good point. We are a tool for you guys. We are volunteers for you guys. It's how you use us as well. We take direction, it's from top down and from the bottom up. That's where we should meet. I think what the point you're talking about is tactics. What tactics to implement. But to have tactics, we have to have a strategy. So to develop a strategy, there has to be a certain level of competence where people make the recommendations, A, from their personal experience, but B, that's why we hired a consultant, because when it came to something that we didn't have a level of competence in, we asked for it, and you supplied us that. So bottom line is, when we're talking about man hours, for every man hour you give from clerk's office, you get 7 man hours of volunteers who come out there and do it. So when you're talking about the effectiveness of what the city is getting versus what the city is spending, benefit and costs involved with that, then you can probably do the math yourself. The issue that I believe you have a valid issue is have more definite strategies that are followed up by tactics, that are followed by measurable results. So we can be more accountable to you, but at the same time, with what you bring up with more meetings, you can be accountable back. So we get business cards, we go to buildings, and we say, this is what the commission has approved. Now, what can you do? How can you help the city to benefit yourself and your property values and everything else? So there needs to be, what I agree with you, 100%, much deeper involvement between the committees and the commission.
Yes. Now, let me ask you, was there one commissioner that was present at your meetings more than any other?
Madam Mayor was present, Dana Goldman was present, especially on 70% of all the meetings. Fabiola was there, and you were there as well.
But I have a question.
And Jennifer and Alex, you were initially, I saw you.
If I
in
can
the
just,
first-
one second, Commissioner Susan, I just want to say, they're here to provide feedback, not to debate back and
Yes.
forth
No,
with
there's
them.
no
So,
debate.
and I just want to also clarify that there is no requirement for the commission to be there. In fact, it's not a great idea because of the potential for sunshine. But go ahead, Commissioner
Well,
Stuyvesant.
my comment was to you, Jerry. If you were sitting down there in a committee and not sitting down here as a vice mayor, would you like to have your committee destroyed by us meeting 3 times a month? So you're not having the opportunity to participate in all that they are doing. So my point is that by you bringing that up, saying that we don't need the committees, if we meet 3 times a month, I think it's very unfair for the people that work, for all the effort, let me finish, but all the effort that they made, it's just not fair to tell them that if we meet more, the 5 of us, then we don't need them. I
That's not what
completely
I said.
disagree.
We have plenty of agenda items. We don't need to consider what a committee is considering. We have plenty of other agenda items to work on.
What you said, okay?
Well,
You said-
Let's not argue back and forth. Let's be respectful of each other. The challenge, and I understand what you're saying, Vice Mayor, you want to meet more often, but I think that logistically, and especially from what we're saying going into budgets, this is, we've been here now for 3 hours, going on 4 hours, and I believe that it's been a really robust conversation, but we can't possibly, in reality, we have to talk about reality. We can't possibly be doing this, 2-3 times a month, and we do look
Why
to the,
not?
one second, let me finish. We do look to the public to give us feedback because we represent them. And the fact that I do understand what you mean, that we need, what your request is to flesh out more information, but they had one task, and they met once a month on that one thing. And that's what made it successful. That would mean that we would need to have 10 meetings a month, more, for every single item that we want to discuss. And that's why we have staff. Our goal is to legislate and create ordinances and resolutions to give the staff direction. It's them that are working, 30, 40, 50 hours a week to come back to, with their expertise. It's not up to us to micromanage them, and that's why we also rely on volunteers and I believe the public to participate. The challenge is, how do we get from the ideas and the conversations to a place where we can actually effectuate legislation and our city in a productive way without running around in circles and chasing our tails? And that's why I'm saying to the city manager, ultimately, you all are the professionals. You are the ones that have to answer to us when we ask you for 10 things and we can only have 5 because the budget doesn't allow all of them. So, we can keep talking about this forever, but ultimately, you're the ones that need to tell us what is the best way to move forward so that everything that we're talking about, we can somehow get to a place where we all feel somewhat comfortable that we got some of what we are asking for achieved, including the vice mayor.
I think we have a general understanding of what committees you would like going forward, and in March, we can bring back some committee appointments for you to vote on.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to
You-
bring up one other point.
Go ahead.
Let's take, for example, the tennis courts on the south side of the city. How many months has this been kicking around? And because we don't meet and discuss it, and now I understand someone wants to have a site visit. How many more months is it going to be before we have a site visit? We should be able to meet, discuss the issue, get it decided, and have it under construction. We're never going to have tennis courts built on the south side if we're not discussing it and meeting and allowing it to go through to construction.
Okay, well, we can add that to our next commission meeting, but there is a reason why we have a process. And so that it's not, one second, wait a second. No, but there's a reason why we have a process, so that we don't all individually start choosing something that we want to monopolize for the
That's why we have
meeting.
an agenda.
Exactly, and that's why we have a process to the agenda, like we do right now, and that's not on the agenda, the tennis courts. So,
So it'll go on another month, though.
it's
and-
not,
and
nec-
nothing ever happens.
not necessarily, but again, this is not part of this conversation. So you have what you need for this item, correct? Is there
Yes.
anybody else that wanted to add anything to this item that we're discussing? Commissioner Viscara, did you want to add anything?
I only want to say, I think it's extremely unfair to say nothing ever happens when we are a very productive city. Plenty happens.
Commissioner Lama?
Yeah,
This
I,
item.
yes, so talking about this item, I understand the tax on our staff, but, you know, you got to keep in mind that we operated these two committees in particular, the ones that are present, we've operated them for a year. So the way I look at it, we need to focus on what the discussion at hand is, and that discussion is to continue with the present committees. So far, we've been able to run these, right? If you need more staff, you know, Mauricio and Stan and Susan, let us know. I know there's talk about adding more. There's a duck there, yeah. So there's more, there's talk about adding more committees, then, you know, we'll cross that bridge at that time. But right now, you know, the issue is the committees that we've been, you know, running at this point, that have been meeting. So, yeah, I think the question is, do we move forward with them or not? My answer is we move forward with them.
Just the final comment before I sit down.
Please, go ahead.
Our city is changing. It has changed fast. The needs are changing. So I think these committees can help you to address these changes. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for staying
Thank
this
you for
long and giving your input. It's very appreciated, and again, it is a testament to your dedication, so thank you for being here. Okay, so, next item. The Underpark.
Mayor, if I may?
Sorry, go ahead.
No problem. So we were asked for an Underpark update, and when we went back to look, it is our recommendation that the Parks and Rec Master Plan include the elements proposed in the Underpark project. And it will be fully studied, and then they will consider that space for, you know, whatever their wants, needs, the residents' wants, needs, recommendations are. It's not currently budgeted in this fiscal year, so to do anything further, we would have to re-engage with a consultant, and I feel like that's premature considering that we still have the Parks and Rec Master Plan going on.
When is that expected to be completed?
September. They should be presenting to you in September, and Myra will be reaching out to all of you to schedule the one-on-one interviews with the consultant for, I want to say, February 28th or March 2nd. Did I get that right? Yes, Gail's saying yes.
Okay. So, all right, Commissioner Viscara, did you want to do you have any questions or have any comments about this?
I think it makes complete sense to fold it into the master plan.
Commissioner Lama?
I agree as well.
Commissioner Stuyvesant?
Can we request information from the consultant, how many people has participated in the answering all the questions, the survey? Yeah,
For the Underpark or the current Park and Rec Master Plan survey?
the master plan altogether.
Yes, we'll shoot you an email later today
Yeah.
with the current number
Yeah,
of
thank you. Please,
respondents.
yeah.
And may I ask, the master plan is looking at every park that we currently have?
They
for-
are looking
for
at
revising?
They are looking at every park. They also visited the Lehman Causeway. They attended that Underpark meeting there. They're fully aware. They're also looking at potential properties if there's a need for, I'm not going to say, but, if the surveys come back that we need something so outrageous that we don't have the property for it right now, they may recommend that we purchase property or relocate something. They're looking at every possible
And
aspect.
Is this Corradino doing the work?
No, this is AECom.
Okay. And why are we not having a return until September?
Why are you not having what until September?
Why are we not having a return of information until September,
So
being that it's February?
September should be the final report. Currently they have the survey going, and then they are going to do the one-on-one meetings, the focus groups, they'll host some workshops. So you'll be getting information as the process goes along. But by contract, they should be finishing and wrapping up a formal report to you in September.
Is there any way to speed them up?
We can talk to them about that.
Let's
However,
try to speed them up.
we'd like to do it right. To be honest with you, we'd like to do it right. When we scheduled this time frame, that's really what it takes.
Was that it?
Yes.
Okay. So just based on my personal experience of these, these sort of things, the first sort of feeling is the feeling of why is it taking so long? And the reality is it's a feeling and not based on fact. And I think that it is extremely important for this to be done right, because this is for the next 10, 20 years of our city. It goes back to what I have said to you before. And I know you said it's been replaced, but I swear it's the same playground equipment and town center that my 17-year-old used when he was 6 months old. So my point is that it is very, very important that we do plan, and I think Felix said, our city is changing, and we need to look at things in a holistic way that includes not just the parks, but really every single property that we own. Because if our city is in fact going the direction that we all think it is, which is potentially younger, more families, more teens, more younger people, we need to be able to accommodate them within the next few years. And putting money into a project because we want it to be done quicker, and I get that, I get it, is irresponsible. So I do also agree that
We're also using experienced people who have done this before.
Well, my
So
point
they
is
should-
that if we're doing a plan, if there's a Parks Master Plan, which I was not a part of, but I do agree with, then it needs to be a master plan and not decide that we want to do one-off projects. So I also agree that, that we fold all of those kinds of projects into a master plan. But to the Vice Mayor's point, if there's a potential to move it up and still do it right, that would be fantastic, obviously, because we would love to see this sooner rather than later.
And yes, and I just want to add, they have done so much back-end work. They have, designed this website to capture the information and have these virtual rooms, so that if you can't attend a workshop in person, there's a lot you're going to see in the next few weeks. So I
Yeah.
think you'll see things moving a whole lot quicker now, but it took a lot of time to do the parks inventory, our recreation programming inventory, which is a ton. For them to put all of that together and survey all of that and come and do site visits, there's been a lot of back-end work, but you'll see a lot more very soon.
Okay, that would be great, because I do agree that, it's kind of been, it feels like it's been dragged on. And when I took the survey, first of all, for the record, I believe the survey was way too long. And I was like the 20th person to respond to it, and it's been in the works for months. So that if you are, to have a huge push so the public feels like they're included, that would be great, because it was one of the responses to the rebranding was the public felt that they were not included, despite the fact that the commission felt that they did a lot. So perhaps we just do need to make even a bigger push and give more information to us so that we understand how many people are participating.
Yes.
It's also billing city government, so the longer it takes, the more you can charge.
No, they have a flat fee.
So,
It's by scope.
Susan, and we're going to be able to participate actively before they come up with the plan.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yes.
because right now I'm blind to whatever they're doing.
No, so the one-on-one meetings will be scheduled in 2 weeks.
Okay.
You'll have a one-on-one meeting with them, and then you're welcome to attend any of the public meetings that they have.
Okay, so but only one-on-one just to start, or whenever we can like meet with them and give our input. Not whenever we can, like you know what I mean. Like whenever there is something different, or I don't know what they're doing, so it's hard for me to say that one meeting with them will be enough for me to give my ideas and the input from the people, because a lot of people have like different ideas of what they want to see in every space, and we have all the age groups in here and growing. So we wanted to accommodate the needs not only of the babies, but also the seniors and in between. So my point is that we can actively participate before they give us like a maquette, like something already prepared and ready.
So, yeah, so to your first question, right now you're scheduled for one, yes. And that's because they want to meet with as many people as possible. So if they meet with you for an hour and then an hour again and an hour again, then that's taking away from 2 other people. So they're really trying to use their time wisely because it is a lump sum. So yes, it is one. However, as I said, in the virtual rooms, there's going to be feedback in there that you're going to be able to look at all the time. And you will be able to, follow it along all the way through, and then there will be other public forums in which for you to participate.
And we won't be breaking any sunshine law, whatever.
Everything that we do that would be a group would be publicly noticed.
Okay.
Okay, but are those virtual rooms the same? So we can put all our input, all our ideas, whatever. I don't know the setup, so I have
That's a
no
great
idea.
question that I'll talk to Valerie later and Mauricio and make sure that everything that we do
going back to
is.
sunshine,
Yeah,
right?
I think if you're not responding to each other, then it's fine.
If it's only like
Yeah, if it's
feeding,
one way,
yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
one
Hopefully,
way.
yeah.
Okay. All right, is
And I
there,
do want to thank all of you who have filled out the survey already. Thank you for taking the time.
I did it
Yes,
twice.
I did already.
No, I'm choking.
I thought it was only one time, so I'm gonna do it
not
again.
from the
All
same
right,
computer.
So with that, can I get a motion?
Yes, motion.
There we go. All right,
what
meeting
was
adjourned. Thank you.
This for
Thank
tonight?
you all. See
Huh?
you in a